All clear. All clear. What I hold back? Roll back, yes sir. I'm glad everyone is tuning in. I'm kind of gonna wait for a few more people to get in before we start moving forward. But for those that were able to tune in last night, we addressed a few issues, not necessarily issues, but more so concerns about our nation, who we are as Nuwaupians, who we are as a people here, who Dr. Malachi York is. Hold on, please, excuse me, 1 second. Who Dr. Malachi Z.K. York is as a constitutionally seated president and head of state, sovereign grand commander. He has various titles. And the purpose really of this live feed is kind of to address the concerns of our nation at this point and questions in regards to who we are and where we are. Questions in regards to our nationality. What is sovereignty? What is Nuwaupian national? What is a United States citizen? What are our rights now today? What can we exercise today legally to legally stand and exercise the rights that all people have that are considered indigenous? The prophecies of our ancients, the acknowledgement of our lands, the acceptance and acknowledgement of our language. These are some key issues that needs to be addressed by the governing body of our nation. And so this forum is kind of, just because it's quick, it's easy, it's it's an avenue that people can tune in to address these issues. Myself, as ambassador, appointed ambassador by our constitutionally seated president. I appreciate it. Someone came in and said, last night was incredible. So, kind of share this video so we can get the people involved and base it on questions. I appreciate you, Brother Quentin Brown. We're trying to get people involved as possible, as many people to involve themselves as possible in order to get the questions out, because a lot of people have questions. And you hear them online, you read them, you hear innuendos and different groups such as the Moors, who claim that they have a sovereign, they have sovereignty. You have the Hebrew Israelites who have a religious group that basically doesn't necessarily offer a route to independence or freedom. They more so address the religious doctrines of foreign invaders that has been introduced to us by foreigners. And so what happens is that we're in a situation where people who are in this 2016 period, December, have seen the outcome of the presidential election, They have seen the turmoil caused by this Mr. Trump getting in office, and with that, there's just a lot of concern, and so it has to be made clear exactly. And I'm gonna start flowing. I'm just trying to let a few people get in, and also allow people to just shoot questions so we can kind of spin it off to the interests of the people and what they're inquiring about, what they need to know in order to make themselves comfortable with our nation and know that we are the ones that our ancestors put in position in order to save our people in this day and time. And the history of our nation has really been hidden. A lot of it has been hidden because, for one, Georgia and down in the southeastern area, 17 and 1800s, of course, the schools in which was built by Georgia, such as UGA, and I wish that as a way I can play, I have just a portion of it where Dr. Malachi Z.K. York explained in 2006 that there was a great conspiracy against him, and it was how big it was that the average layman, the average person, the average individual who didn't know, just took the media for what was going on, would have no idea what was taking place. A lot of it was hidden in the basements of these schools because, for one, there was no integration. Schools did not allow natives or indigenous inside of their institutions. And so if you needed to learn, and I'm going to give a perfect example of that, Dr. Martin Luther King, who went to Morehouse, he was, if anyone knows, you can see him seated around, and the We Are Family, Dr. York's Nubian Nation family, We Are Family poster that came out in the 80s. You saw next to him was, now follow this, it was a chief. Now remember the poster. If you look at Dr. Martin Luther King, you'll see that, look at his features, you'll see, because he was born in Atlanta, born in Muskogee Nation, Creek Territory, you'll see he looks like a Native American. That's just a known fact. If you take a picture, pull it up real quick, look at his eyes, look at Martin Luther King's facial structure, look at his nose, he doesn't look African. He was not African. Dr. Martin Luther King was actually a Yamasee chief. A lot of people don't know that. You look at him. You put a headdress on him, you put Native American attire, you see that he was a Native American chief. The reason why I'm saying that is because, and I'm gonna get back to the purpose of this this particular live feed. If you look at the time period where Dr. Martin Luther King was born, he's born in I think in the 40s, or no, matter of fact, 20s. I think 29, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. I think he was born around 29. Yeah, he was killed in, I think, 68 or 69. Around, I think he was 40 something years old. And the schools were segregated. And he spoke about when he was locked up in Birmingham, he wrote a letter. He penned an incredible letter. And that letter, you should pull that letter up, and you'll see in the letter where he talks about how before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock, we were here. Before, okay, someone say never made it to 40. I guess I'm thinking he's may have been close to 40, but 39. I think that might have been it. 39, 30, 40, 50. Okay, 10, right. He was a little shy of 40. But at any rate, he never was able to penetrate the schools or go to any of the schools because, of course, there was segregation. Okay, and because of segregation, there was no education on international law. There was no information on Native Americans. There was no information on Africans or African history because at the time when the schools were being built, of course, no blacks could attend their schools, as well as no Native Americans. Native Americans wasn't even considered citizens until the 30s, actually the 30s or 40s, which is a reason why Dr. Malachi York was never considered a citizen at the time, because of his Native American bloodline, as well as his foreign ties, but that's a different class, actually. We're going to address that a little later, because what happens is we have to chop up. We're going to have to chop up these classes section by section, because they're so lengthy. And because they're so lengthy, I don't want to get long-winded and go in different directions. I want to focus on particularly the rights of our nation, the legal standing we have in this day and time, what we can do now, because that's a lot of people's questions right now. What exactly can we do? We have the petition. Let me say this. We have. Let me turn this heater off. We have what you call two parts of our nation. When you have a nation, anyone that's overstanding government and governmental functions and the organizational skills or level or competency of a government, you will understand in studies that there are two functions of a nation. There's actually two functions of a nation. You have your internal, and this is, I want to clear up amongst our wu-nuwaupu family, in the position of the embassy, in the position of the government of the United wu-nuwaupu nation, and any government worldwide. There are two functions of a nation. You have your internal function, where you have your tribes, your customs, your laws, your rituals. You have your internal legal order, which is your police, your military, though military acts as a defense for outside threats, and even sometimes internal, but more so outside threats. You also have within your nation, inside the internal structure. That's why you have your secretaries, your department heads, your secretary of certain departments that's responsible for the inner activities of a nation. Our administration in Brooklyn and the headquarters, wherever our president has appointed different people in the position of our nation, it's to deal internally. And that's clear. There's no conflict between the internal aspect of our nation, the internal aspect of the legal fight, which is we've used the petition for Obama, as well as respects to Victoria Broussard, who's the legal, the on record attorney for Dr. Malachi York, and the legal assistant Mario Jessup, that's dealing with the internal affairs of our nation. And that has to be understood, because a lot of people don't really understand government activities, because of course our nation is fairly new to some and unknown to the average citizen. When you look at citizens worldwide, most of them really don't know how governments are shaped. They don't know how governments work internally. They don't know necessarily the protocols, and a lot of it is just out of ignorance, not because people are stupid. It's because it's just not known. It's not a overstood area of knowledge that individuals who are not in the government or have not went to school to study government functions, or political science is correctly the term, they don't know how it operates. And people may not know that there is an external part. What do we mean by that? Your wu-nuwaupu nation has always had, even in the Constitution by Dr. Malachi York, written and drafted and agreed upon by 30,000 wu-nuwaupu nationals, that there are people who have specific jobs in regards to the government. The external part, and this is what's important in my position and my job, which people may not even understand our capacity, and I want to make those things clear too. The capacity of an embassy, right? The embassy has a certain capacity that operates in international law, and what that means is, if you ask, just out of example, we keep it in layman's term. If you talk to the average person on the street, if you ask them, what does an embassy do? Most people won't know. Most people, if you ask them what an ambassador does, they won't know. Again, not out of, it's just not a normal knowledge that you can go research. Most people you don't find a person that says, I'm going to school to become an ambassador. It's not even, I'm going to diplomatic school. I'm going to international relations. It's rare. And that's why international attorneys are rare. You know, in the last 14 years, we may have had contact with 2 or 3 international attorneys. One was Frank Rubino. He's down there in Florida, which was an attorney for the master teacher and his lack of jurisdiction case. And this was the case that was really important. One case that was really important in regards to nationhood and his sovereign status on record. You have to remember certain things that he put on record by himself for the court in several instances, including the sentencing, as well as the pretrial, as well as I think Hugh lost in several cases where we have the documents where he said that he was outside of their jurisdiction. They lacked jurisdiction. He said, "You are a settler. You have no rights over my person and my body." And that argument still stands. It's still relevant. It still holds weight because he still is a constitutionally seated president. And with that being said, he still has international rights, and that he's never relinquished. And so when people say, he was arrested for breaking the law, first of all, a president is not prone to outside foreign law. When our nation established itself in June 26, 1992, our president he's as a sovereign head of state. It's a statement that says, "Thou shalt not touch the crown." That's an international maximum where the head or the crown holder the laws are created for the subjects of the crown, or the subjects of the king, or the subjects of the particular government that has placed these individuals in power. And with that being said, we put our constitutionally seated president in a position where he was protected by international law and still is. And there are international covenants that regulate the protection and sovereignty of internationally protected persons, such as government officials. You have family of government officials. You have, of course, the head of state and other diplomats and individuals who have been appointed by a government. And so our president took that seat. Not one time in that position has he relinquished his position as head or king, or head of state or president or chief. And the reason why those words are interchangeable, those titles are interchangeable, is because in the international community, no matter what tribe you come from, particularly, if you're a president of the people, you're a president appointed by the people. The tribal aspect is for the internal organizational departments that dictate whether or not this tribe is affiliated with our nation, that tribe is affiliated with our nation. That's why when you see the United wu-nuwaupu Nation, Washita, Shoshone, you see the Creek and Seminole. Okay, these are tribes that are within our nation. These are tribes that have been people from around the world, nationals from around the world, has come together and accepted our chief as the head of all chiefs because of the fact that he's the only pure blood chief that still exists. There is no other pure blood chief on the planet, not in this, or not on this land. And so, our president, in that sense, never relinquished his rights, even up until he was kidnapped in Milledgeville, and on May 8th, 2002, and the raid took place, and they incarcerated him, arrested him, kidnapped him, which is an international crime. And so the United States is being held accountable for that international crime, and to torture and the medical neglect. All of that is the external operation of our nation. And so all of that deals with the external operation of our nation, because the international rights that us as a people still have when we appointed him and voted him in on territory that was once ours and was stolen, and that we regained again in the rights of indigenous people. It dictates clearly that indigenous people have a right to subsistence of the land in which they originated. So when you deal with the international rights and you deal with the external operation of our nation, know that an ambassador and an embassy and the officers of any government body that has an external operation and who's responsible for dealing with other nations. Embassies are responsible for, if you go to DC, right? Washington, DC is a place, an embassy row, where all nations from around the world are. I'm looking for the document. Okay, here we go. All nations around the world send ambassadors to the U.S. for a specific reason. They send them to the U.S. to carry out the interests. This is why they're there. Carry out the interests of that nation to the United States. All around the world, embassies are established for that particular reason. If Germany wants to, Germany has an embassy in D.C. All African nations have embassies in Washington, D.C. European nations, Canada, South American nations, they have embassies in Washington, D.C. And anytime the interests of those particular nationals have to be addressed, then they would deploy an envoy or an ambassador or a diplomatic agent to that particular White House in this case, or State Department in this case as well, the U.S., and address issues that have affected the nationals. And when that ambassador goes to that specific head government, wherever he's accepted as a diplomat, he's not considered persona non grata, right? Persona non grata is a person not wanted, or we're not gracious for you. It's Latin, and which they tried to say about they tried to use that. The United States tried to use that later in regards to the diplomatic position of Dr. York, but they realized that they couldn't do it because they would have to send him back to Liberia if you consider persona non grata, which is a different topic and a different class. And we'll address that Liberian situation in the very near future. And people should tune into that so we can understand diplomatic law. But this ties into diplomatic law, and it ties into diplomatic law, and it ties into the embassies and our functions and the capacity in which we can function as having diplomatic immunity, as well as certain exercises of our function in diplomatic protection, which is law. Those words I'm saying, everything I'm using in this particular class is strictly legal. It's legal jargon I'm going to use for the wu-nuwaupu nations and the Moors who want to join, and the Hebrew Israelites who need to join the Nation of Islam. All of y'all need to really kind of tune in so you can understand what real nationality is and understand the legal precepts and the legal mode in which all nations operated for the last 400 years. This is not new. What I'm saying is not new. It may not be something that's been given to the layman, but when it comes to government function, most people don't even care what their government does as long as they don't hurt them. As long as they make sure that the nationals are. Good question, Prince. I'm gonna get to that, Prince Eli. I got you on that question. Government, most people don't really, they want to make sure their government protects them, they make sure they secure the seas, secure the borders, make sure immigrants and foreign nationals are protected inside their borders. There's certain key cares and concerns that nationals have with their nation. But when it comes to the external operation, that's a job for embassies. And embassies are protected under international law as sovereign places. An embassy is a sovereign seat. The seat is appointed by the president, and the embassy is protected under international law, and you cannot invade, touch, or they say molest. They use the word molest as far as touch the body, succumb the family to their jurisdiction, or the property to their jurisdiction. And this is what I wanted to show you. One of the books this book here, which we'll get into Eli's question, and I'll answer that question too. Great question. This book now this you're not going to see this. You probably won't see this in the average library. This book I'm about to show you. Why? Because it's about $200 to $300, and most people don't want to know. How does a sovereign embassy establish itself in a foreign land under rule of a separate legal? And then, good brother, hold that question. I'm gonna answer that question too. I'm gonna get right to these questions, and I'm glad y'all are asking these questions. Okay, this book here. See that? See that? This is by Eileen Denzer. You see, I combed through it. Okay, this book here. You want to know about diplomatic law? This is the book to get. It's simple. It's not a hard. People try to make things difficult. Simple questions can be answered if you do the study. Now I'll get to that and that question. The question is, I'm gonna go down the line. Why haven't other diplomats gotten involved? Simply because diplomats work for their government. Okay, and when you work for your government, you're appointed by your government to carry out a specific task. And I'm gonna give you an example, brother, in reference to that question. If a diplomat gets arrested, if every diplomat got involved, then there would be chaos or interference. I got you, bro. And then you have this interference into the affairs of a sovereign state, which is illegal in international law. You cannot intervene into the affairs of another nation. This is why other nations, regardless of the law, this is why the U.S., I'm going to give you an example. The U.S., regardless of the laws that they may feel in another nation, is illegal because they do have circumcision for females in other nations that the United States considers illegal. They do have marriages of underage. They call them arranged marriages in other nations. The U.S. cannot intervene because you're intervening into the laws of another nation. And this is what has to be laid out when people say, well, didn't Dr. York violate some kind of law? First of all, the only law that you can recognize in our nation, in regards to us, is the laws that's for us. No other nation you can't intervene into Mali's laws. You can't intervene into Ghana's laws. You can't intervene into Vietnam or China. Another nation cannot use their power, sovereign power, to condemn or judge another nation's laws. Another nation, the way they decided, because the people, you got to understand, the people placed that government in power. And if the people accept the individuals they placed in power, then they accept the laws and the legislature that government has established. And with that, the power of the people remains sovereign amongst them and their governing body. So no diplomat could step in and say, though they can show concern, they can express concern, but legally they can't step in because they are not appointed to address other nations issues. Now, even under statuses of war, which is there's a book, international law book called the Law of War. There's rules of engagement, as they say. And so diplomats can step in that sense, but that diplomat typically should be and will be the diplomat appointed to that particular nation. All right. So the question is about diplomats stepping in. They can. But this is why for years that our nation was imploring Liberia to assist, or the embassy to assist in the embassy to assist in Dr. Malachi York as a diplomat. So before it begins to sound too layered, we have to understand that the master teacher held several positions. This is why people are like, why is he a president? How was he a chief? How was he a diplomat? Because he held several positions. And we're going to get real in detail with the Liberian thing, but I'm going to address this briefly while we're mentioning it. Liberia was going through a war in 98. 97, 96. 96, I think war started and it ceased. And then 98, it started again. Well, at the time, there was no Liberian structured government for refugees. There was a lot of Liberian refugees who had to leave the country They had to travel abroad, and a lot of them came to the U.S. The government of Liberia had okay, good. The government of Liberia had no money. They had no established. If you go to the embassy in D.C., if you've seen it, it's a little house on the corner. It's not even on Embassy Row, because Liberia is known. They've been a lot of poverty over the years. They've been abused and things of that nature. It was a colony of free slaves, so they never really got the respect that they were supposed to get from the international community. In fact, the U.S. didn't recognize Liberia until 69 years later, after Britain accepted them as a sovereign state first. Look it up. Britain accepted them, then the United States took 60 years to say, you know what, I'll accept you now. But it wasn't until 60 years later. So Liberia's been abused. The whole point I'm making is at the time of the war, there was no money. Governments was coming in and out. There was a lot of coups trying to take over. The military had took over under Charles Taylor, and it was a rival between one facet of Liberia and another facet of Liberian infrastructure. As far as the government body, was different pockets of rebels in different places. And so even in the U.S. in the 90s, there was no legal representation properly of Liberia. This is how this is what needs to be known. The master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, Liberia saw interest in him because he was the only one at the time that was assisting Africans who were abroad. If you came to the U.S. as a Liberian, you could find no help, not even with your own government, because they were in war. So there was really no officials there that could hold it down and assist Liberians with their passports, with their IDs, with their identity, with the comfort of saying that your nation is going through a little turmoil, but we got you, we're here. Their government wasn't available. So what Liberia did was they chose Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, because of watching him over the years. They understood, right? Thanks for that comment. And please share that we're on to address this. The person just said that they're Liberian on the Flomo, and he understands what was taking place. If you knew what was going on, Liberians had to leave. A lot of Liberians went into Sierra Leone. Many went into Ghana. That's why Ghana and Liberia has a very close relationship, because they were accepting a lot of Liberians who had to leave. So what happens to Liberians here in the U.S.? They don't have an ID. They don't have a passport, right? They don't have no comfort. They can't go to, in the South, they just scattered. Let's just say that. It's not that deep. They were scattered all over. They were scattered all over. So what takes place? The government of Liberia appoints Dr. Malachi York as a consul general. Now, that's totally different from a diplomat. Y'all got to understand that there's two legal terms going on here. One is a diplomatic agent and one as a consul general. But it's used in both instances. People say consul general, diplomatic agent, and they think it's one term. So a lot of our people who hasn't researched, it's just real, because people have things going on, and it's okay. It's not an attack, but it's just the fact that he held consul general position and diplomatic agent, and the diplomatic agent can play both parts. And you can, as a diplomat, you can have, because sometimes you're short on staff. Yes, I will, sister. Is that a sister? Yeah. You have what you call dual positions, tri-positions actually. So Dr. Malachi York not only became a Liberian diplomat, he also was appointed a general counsel. Now, why is that important? It's important because a consul general holds their job is specific, very specific. It's not just, maybe people don't know. I don't know if you do know what a consul general does. But a consul general is the person you call when you are a foreigner in another nation. You get arrested. Say, for instance, you get arrested. Liberians gets arrested in Atlanta. The country is in war. They have no solid embassies in D.C. You arrested as a Liberian in Fulton County. under international law, right? Where's this document? I wish I had this paper. A lot of things I have in this folder that I should have pulled out. I'll find it if y'all give me time. Just be patient with me, because there's a lot to cover. And I didn't pull it out because I didn't expect it to be in this class. But if someone can pull it up online, pull up VCCR, right? And VCDR. Wow, that's VCCR and VCDR. The Vienna Convention of Diplomatic Relations and the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. Two totally different documents with two totally different spheres of international law. And the various, those different covenants address the positions of a diplomat and the position of a counselor. So I'm saying that to say, the land, when Liberians was the land, being that Dr. Malachi York was a diplomatic agent and a consul general, the land was considered a consular general's post. Meaning, there was diplomatic and international protection even under that rubric, under that covering of consul general. The entire 500 acres was not only protected as a sovereign head of state nation where a president was seated, not the entire our territory. This is another question. We discussed this last night and we can address it again. The 500 acres of land in Edenton, for those that don't know, they say it was just a compound. No, it was our capital city. Okay, VER signed in Vienna. The post goes up. Okay, it's entered into force on 24th of April, 1964. 1963, the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. That's important, so you'll know that one can be a diplomat and not be a consul general, and one can be a consul general and not be a diplomat. And this is why they created two conventions to distinguish the two. So a diplomat agent has different credentials from a consul general. Diplomatic agents have diplomatic immunity. Consul generals don't necessarily have diplomatic immunity because they're not considered diplomats. They're considered counselors. And counselors assist foreigners, their people, in the land in which they posted at. So if you ever been to jail or wherever you are, you may say, you know, I lost my passport. You may be visiting Italy as a U.S. citizen. I lost my passport. The first thing they'll tell you, call your, I was reading something from them. They'll say, call your counselor. Exactly. So that's what it is. In another country, performs two functions: protecting in the host country the interests of their countrymen. You know, I just said that, and furthering the commercial and economic blah, blah, blah. That's the Convention on Consular Relations. Okay, thanks for pulling that up, Brother Anand. Now, that consular relations was Baba's position. What was he doing? Protecting the host country, Liberia, the interests of their countrymen, Liberians, in the U.S. This is what Tamaray was. It was an African exchange, cultural consular post for indigenous Africans in America, Nuwaupians, and anyone else that wanted to acknowledge their culture or re-establish themselves or reposition themselves or rekindle themselves inside of the consular post. And they were welcome to the land. And there was Liberians who would come to the land and say they knew who. Matter of fact, there was one brother that was close to the master teacher was taught who was Liberian. And so it's a known fact that the master teacher at the time, him traveling to Liberia, most people didn't know that that Liberia had an interest in what he was doing, because he traveled to Africa. He traveled to Sudan and Morocco and Ghana and throughout Liberia, and they saw the works of this great man. They saw what he was doing with Africans in America, and he knew that he could unify Africans in America, so they appointed him and chose him because he was the only one capable of having that type of ability and authority to carry out a consular general's post, and that's why he was appointed by Charles Taylor at the time. And the paperwork, because there was no central government, and I've been to Liberia. I was in Liberia with the sister Zanitra several times for a few years in 2008, actually, when Obama was inaugurated, I was in Liberia, in Monrovia, and I watched the inauguration on television because I remember it was cold in D.C. and it was hot in Liberia. And so we were there. Zanitra, the sister, was working and trying to meet the President Sirleaf in regards to their consul general and diplomat. He was appointed too. It's not unheard of, but it's not typical. You very rarely have a diplomat who's appointed as a consul general because most nations have people to fill both seats. Most nations have enough employees where you don't have to be a diplomat and a consul general or a secretary and a driver. But in the case of Liberia, they didn't have the necessary staff. So the master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, was appointed Liberian Consul General, and he has a diplomatic number. So just to be clear with that. So along with the fact that he was appointed as president of the indigenous Africans in the southeastern area of what you call the United States. And so that clears that up. And so getting to this book here, us not relinquishing our rights, and I'm just showing you how powerful Tamaray was, Kodesh, what it actually functioned as. Not what people, the media, this is why it's important for people who don't know what took place or don't know anything about the land. All they saw, they hear compound, they hear these different terms, and they don't really investigate. Well, this is what our land was functioning as. As one, it functioned as a capital seat, where Dr. Malachi York, our president, was positioned. And if you remember, if you read your Constitution, you'll understand that he was grooming ambassadors when he had bookstores. That was the purpose of having bookstores in different places in different countries. Eventually, bookstores would have become embassies for Nuwaupians who were what? In different places around the world. That's why you had bookstores in Trinidad, bookstores in Barbados, bookstores in England, bookstores in Ghana, bookstores all over the world. So whoever Nuwaupians needed to come, they could go right there and say, I'm trying to enjoy my fun. Can you help me carry out the interest of myself as a Nuwaup? That's what the Consul General seat in the embassy was doing. And so that's what it functioned as. So now, moving forward, and with his arrest in 2000, kidnapped in 2002, he placed on record that he was a Liberian diplomat when he was arrested, as well as in court, in the international scope, he covered both scopes, and both of them were under international law. He never relinquished his rights and said, I concede to settlers. He specifically said settlers. And the reason that's important, because when you settle, foreigners settle on another land. I'm going to show you this book here. This is going to blow your mind too. It's, you might not have seen this before, but right here, look at that. This book, you can look it up online, maybe a few hundred. No, this is actually not that much. But The Creation of States and International Law. I've been doing my homework. And in this book, it shows, this is pretty thick. This is what my library consists of. That's why I don't do too much talking. I do study and I read. And then I'll know what I'm talking about when you hear me. And that's just how it was. That's just how the master taught us and raised us. And so when you study the creation of states, the reason why it says the creation of states, because states are created. States are created. See that? The creation of states. What state are we in? The state of Nuwaupu. How are these states? These states are created in international law. Just go through it briefly. Let me just show you a few things in here, because these are the questions that we need to know. Look at that here. What does that say? Statehood and recognition. The criteria for statehood as effectiveness, you have international law conditions for the creation of states. Then you have issues of statehood before United Nations organs. Now this is issues that nations have. Independence, nations have all the time. That's why nations become they bring issues before the international community in regards to who they are and why they need to be recognized and the criteria for recognition. The criteria for recognition is in this book. It's not something that I created. It's my job to investigate this so we would know when the master says state of Nuwapia, or Nuwapia is a state. When you say Nuwapia, you're saying state of Nuwap. The world doesn't know what Nuwap is, but they understand that there are people in a specific state of mind of Nuwapia. That's our nationality. Nuwapia is not, Nuwapians are not, it's just not a religion. That's why it's basically it's confusing to most that don't understand. But in a legal sense, we are Nuwapians by nationality because we are in that state. And they're always in international law. They're going to ask you, what state do you recognize? What state are you in? That's why it's the same process that happened with the Jews. The Jews had said that they were scattered people, that their land was stolen, and there were certain covenants and agreements between Israel, the Arab world, and England that established the state of Israel. That's clear. What is the state of Israel? They say in an Israeli or Israelite so-called state of mind, but that's a religion. Israelite is the name of Jacob, who was given that name as a rebellion against this being who he so-called wrestled with. And from that, an entire nationality was given to these people for, for statehood. In order to have a state, you got to say I'm an Israelite, or in that sense, that's a specific case. That's what's called a special condition. Because when you say special condition, you're saying basically that this nation has to be set up because these people went through a Holocaust, and we want to set aside land for these individuals to gather and live their culture, speak their language, and live of, for, and by each other. So the same thing when the master teacher said, you are settlers coming here. You settle in this land, set up 13 colonies, follow that, all the way down from New England and your New Yorks. You had your new things going on. You had your New Englands going on, not old Englands, or you had your New Jerseys going on. You had your Virginia's going on. You had your Georgia. You had this new land of Georgia. These new Georgians, right? Not necessarily Georgia, but you had, they wasn't from, it was different countries that actually, different ethnic backgrounds of Mukasu, Tamu, Caucasians that came here and settled on Muskogee Nation territory. And so when the master said on record, your settlers you have no jurisdiction over, because he was saying that I was here, I was colonized. We were colonized, and someone wrote on the day before the expiration, the establishment of the Jewish state, May 14. I'm glad y'all assisting with that, because I don't have my computer up. So the Jewish state was established, and I'm gonna read it. It says on 14th of May, 1948, the day before expiration of the British mandate, David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish agency, declared the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel to be known as the State of Israel. So that was a creation of a state. It didn't exist. It didn't always exist. It had to become recognized through what? Through plebiscitary process. What is that? That is a voting process. Simple. It is so simple. I need a digital chalkboard. Okay. Oh, that's what he was telling me it is. I was just reading the notes. It is a simple process where people say, and I'm gonna get back to how easy it was. We voted our president in. The problem is I don't think Nuwapians worldwide realize we have a certain type of power as a people, we the people, to vote who we want in office. And it doesn't have to be accepted or not verified by anyone else. It doesn't have to be something that has to be agreed upon by anyone else. It's not something that has to be stamped or approved by another nation. No people around the world raises their hand and no one took a census and said, do you recognize Czechoslovakia? No one asked you that. No one asked black people, do you recognize Canada? When you were born, you saw Canada existed. You acknowledged Canada existed. And if you wanted to go on their territory, you had to apply for a passport or visa, travel there, and get permission to come on their territory. No one asked you permission. No one asks permission for a nation who's been colonized, abused, right? You've been exploited for economic gain. You've been enslaved. Everything has been stripped from you. And you still think you have to ask, can I be a nation? This is your own hindrance. You're expecting someone to come and pull you out of bondage. You can't expect anyone to come assist. No nation is going to assist people, our people, into freedom. No, that's not going to happen. So back to the case. I don't want to get into another area. I want to try to stay streamlined, but it's so much. It's so much information that that needs to get out. But let's take it step by step. On the land when the master was incarcerated. When he was incarcerated and they took him to trial, pre-trial, tortured him first, so-called plea that they said he took, which is a whole nother issue. And I'm not going to go to the case too much, but more so about his position and his statement on trial. That how he said that he should be given, the jurisdiction belongs to his people, and that the United States did not have jurisdiction. It was fought by Rubino, but he didn't argue it at the second hearing. It was placed in, and Judge Royal denied it because of certain arguments that was placed in there that didn't really have a strong position. They were okay arguments, but they weren't as strong arguments, considering that no one knew our story. No lawyer that went to trial at the time knew or understood what we are and why we came down here. When we came down from the south, from the north, it was really unheard of. It was the first time it was done. No one understood the spiritual parts aspect of our tribe and the so-called minors that the case implied why Malachi came down. They implied his intent to come down was to transport minors across state lines. This is what they say. Say, okay, he brought these individuals down here for the intent of sexual purpose. First of all, the master, Dr. Malachi York, traveled with a caravan, a group of his immediate family. He didn't get into a caravan with everyone moving at one time, thousands of people coming down to Tamaray. That's not what happened. Why? Because I was there. I was up north, and I was in the classes when he was explaining where we had to go and how we had to come south. A lot of people don't know this is where the intent was. The intent of why he came down, which was to rebuke the government's indictment. The government indictment was that he intended to travel across state lines for these purposes. They never proved intent. They blocked the intent or the purpose of us moving down here in the first place. They blocked it in court. When I went into the courtroom to put it on record on why we came down here, and the Jacob York conspiracy, which I'll get into, which is another class, another segment, was to put on record that our tribes up north were scattered. The master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, had different tribal pockets in different areas that he had to reach. And he had to reach them through tone, by word of mouth. When you heard your chief's voice, most wu-nuwaupians, listen, when you heard his voice, you understood, wow, there's something about him. I connect to him. It's something. Let me listen to it again. This is how he had to get his tribal members. This is how he had to reach us in forms of different cities. We had to literally go find our people. We had to go propagate, go out in the streets and say, you are such and such. You are Nubian at the time, which was an earlier rendition of and metamorphosis into the word Nuwaupian. But there was stages to his method and to his methodology of reaching other tribal members who was what? They went to different cities, forced from the south in the 1800s, and most of us settled up north. Most Nuwaupians down here settled up north and moved from the south because of the abuse of the settlers who came, the Scottish, the Irish, and the Polish, the IRS, Irish, the police, the Polish, and the Scottish, who were your more so the killers to take the land. And so we all moved up north. If you talk to any one of your grandmothers or grandparents, they say, where you from? Most of them say, I'm from Georgia. I'm from South Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. I'm from wherever. You know, but it's down in the South. So Black America came from Muskogee Nation. And I'm going to show you again where Muskogee Nation is. Just in case you missed it yesterday, I did pull out a few extra maps. This is one of the popular. Some of the other ones are really huge. But if your parents came from, look at there. Let's see. Let me pull this off. If your parents came from, let's see if your parents came from one of these areas. Let me back up. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see the shape, right? If you see this whole shape, this is from this right here. And I know I showed this yesterday. I'm just trying to make it a little bit. If you came from here, this is the coast, East Coast, Atlantic Ocean. This is the Mississippi. And this is what's now Mississippi here. This is now Mississippi. This is now Alabama. And if you came from any one of these areas, Muskogee Nation, this is a map. So what we're talking about, when the master talked about the nation, he's not saying it as, oh, just Little Edenton. This is where we were located. This is where the capital city was, right here. Somewhere around here was Yamasee territory, right in this little section. When he says this is our land, he was talking about all of this. He wasn't just talking about 500 acres. That's the only amount we acquired at the time. So that's what we had to work with. And then, okay, and then from there, if you go back in history, when they settled, the settlers came here to this area, everyone moved up north. This group of people, most people in Chicago, ask my people from Chicago, they family came from Mississippi. Most of the Midwest came from Alabama and Mississippi. The Georgians, because of the Underground Railroad and the other ways up north, they went this way, right? They went towards Philadelphia and New York and traveled up through North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. And the tribes over here is a tribe right here called this word says Tapahoukas. This is a Chickasaw right here. Cherokees right here. Choctaw. So when a person says I'm Cherokee, a person says I'm Choctaw, what are they saying? You of the Muskogee Nation. This is Creek country. This is all, it was thousands of creeks here. So they called it the Creek country. Not that we were creeks. People are saying, oh, I'm Creek. No, it was Creek country inhabited by the Muskogee wu-nuwaupu. Now, then she's definitely, which is, the sister Hapet Ibrahim says her family was born in, her maternal grandfather was born in Ufala. That's a Native American term. Now, we're getting into the books now. Y'all kind of, if you look up that word, Ufala, I think it is. It's in this book here. This book here. Now, this is going to get into our doctrine real heavy. So I mean, I don't know how long y'all want to get into this, but I just have time. You know what I'm saying? This is what we do. And so this book here, American Indian Removal, what it goes into explaining. Let me show y'all something real quick, so people to know that it's just not something. Okay, now, hey, here we go. Look what that says. African descended people among the Seminoles, like Abraham, were welcomed because of their usefulness, not slaves. Follow that? Not slaves in the sense of American chattel slavery. They instead lived in a social arrangement by which the slave paid tribute to the owner. And right? And that means that Africans, most Africans in the South, now this is Muskogee Nation now, because this is African descended people and removal. This right here, he was a mixed breed. This guy right here, Abraham, was a black Seminole, one of the many escaped black slaves absorbed into the Seminole Nation. And the reason he was absorbed in it was thousands of Africans in America that was absorbed into what? Seminole Nation, which was a part of the Muskogee Nation. The Seminoles were right down here in this area because this was all us. Before this line here, this was all us. They migrated Seminole County. The Seminoles was in a lower area. And all the Seminoles meant was to run away. If you look at the word Seminole means to run away. What does that mean? They ran from up here when the Mukasu settled and they ran into another direction. The Muskogee Nation, wu-nuwaupians, ran to the south or moved to the south. We became known as the Seminoles down here. When we went up north, we were just Negroes. And I'm going to show you where that term come from, but I don't want to get too long-winded in so far as trying to stay on one topic because it can go into different directions. When the Indian removal, African descended people in removal. Now that's why the master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, says that we are Africans in America and indigenous. So he combined the tribes because we're all mixed up. So you don't find a person who's just directly pure blood except him. That's why he holds the seat of indigenous people, because he's the one that is the only pure blood indigenous African in America and indigenous Native American by blood on this territory. So he holds the keys to both freedoms of both bloodlines, because everyone else would be considered mixed. Now, if you look here, when the Indian removal became law, a significant part of what? Southeastern Indian societies consisted of who? African descended people, both slave and free. Their presence became an underlying element in the pro-removal argument of Southerners, and in some ways served to expedite Indian removal once it began. The institution of slavery helped create in the southern states a need for the land that Indian removal would provide, because extensive cotton farming made possible by slave labor quickly depleted the soil. New lands had to be opened, and this is where we was removed. So in the removal, this is right here, I have a bookmark by certain parts. It says here, the removal of southern tribes created a slave trade in the West where none existed. The numbers of African descended people who were removed were Choctaws. What does that say? Muskogee Creeks, Florida Indians, Chickasaw, Cherokees, and West is uncertain. More than 500 each removed with the Choctaw and the Muskogees. The Chickasaw held about 1,500 near the end of removal. Nearly 500 removed with the Seminoles. Now, when you talk about the tribes, this is why it's important to know who we are, because all of us are part of this. All of us in some way have mixed in with the Muskogee Nation. So if you say I'm African, or if you say, well, my family's African, they were slaves, you were Muskogee. You're wu-nuwaupian. You come from what wu-nuwaupu, the Muskogee area that was ours. And it's proven, we went through it yesterday in certain areas where we talked about the treaty fraud. And the treaty fraud removed section by section the lands bit by bit, piece by piece. And this is still all international now. I'm still covering our nationhood insofar as who we are as a people and how the bloodlines of and the descendancy reach down to us, and why Native Americans don't really know that they mixed in. Right there, it's clear that Africans mixed in with the Muskogee Nation Creek. So some of them went west, and that's why you have Muskogee Nation tribes west. If you go west, I've been to Oklahoma. I've met with the Muskogee Nation over there. And the ones that are over there are the mixed Mukasu who mixed in and they look for federal assistance. The ones that refuse to mix in, like us, the Yamasee, the Upper Creeks, who were pure blood and warred against the settlers in 1763 the Yamasee uprising out in South Carolina, because it was still the same area, it reached all the way over. We were the ones who refused to mix in. And so most of us went north and rebelled. The ones who were weaker stayed south and dealt with the abuse. And so the ones who were north, Dr. Malachi York as Chief Black Eagle started up there first. That's where he started. The mission started off Coney Island, New York, Brooklyn, all throughout Bushwick Avenue and Hart Street, and building the communities. But he also said we're a nation. And not one time has he ever said that we were not a nation. Every time he spoke in reference to whatever religious school we came in, he always said, I'm building a nation. At the time, most Nagaru had no idea we came from this area, the South. They knew we were from the South, but they had no idea the extensive knowledge of our nation and the roots and the land that we actually owned and how it was taken back to Dr. Martin Luther King. He knew about the land. He knew our nation was here, but he had no clue of how they stole it. So his job was to say, look, let's just integrate, try to do some things better. Let's try to help our people peacefully, get our people in the right spot, because no one knew how this nation had become subjected by the Mukasu. No one had an understanding. Now I'm gonna show you how the lands was taken. I didn't show you this map yesterday, but you see this, and I keep reiterating this. You see the whole area. Now, when the settlers came in, of course, they only had this right here. They had 25 miles in. These were ceded lands in the early. Let me take this off. See that? We looked at this yesterday. We're just gonna go over it briefly. These are ceded lands. It says Colonial Georgia, 1773 to 1777. We gave them this land. We gave them St. Paul Parish. We gave them St. George Parish, St. Matthews, St. Philip, right? All these parishes, they were called parishes. They wasn't even cities. And all of this was ours. Got that? This was at Muskogee Creek territory. All these creeks. If you see a lot of those lines are just creeks there. There's massive waterways and rivers. Now, this right here is the Georgia Land Cessions. Right there. It's these two rivers. These are two rivers here. This river, boom. This river. Look, this is the Blue Nile, White Nile. This is the Nile. Once the Blue Nile splits, it becomes, I'm saying they're not the Nile River, but this is Altamaha. This was Atlantis. This was where the Greeks knew a second vacation spot. Why? Because it was the same natural nature design as Egypt. It's all natural. It's not something that the master teacher created. He knew these things. So we came, where did we come? Right dab in the center of these two rivers. This is Altamaha River. It's the third largest river the west and the east coast. Freshwater. So now, what happens when no one is on this land and very little destruction of the land? What happens when you feed a fertile area of two rivers for centuries? All of this area was so fertile. It was incredibly fertile. It had huge fish, deer, birds, it was over 100 species of apples. Not your Macintosh and your, granny apples. There was over 100 different types of apples. This is the description that James Oglethorpe gave King George for the charter, and said this land right here is equivalent to paradise. This is why after the treaties here, you saw the other map, this is where they started taking the lands in these treaties. Each one of these treaties is a specific time where they chopped it up, so-called created land cessions with us, took this in 1802, started 1733. This is when James Oglethorpe settled. 1755, they settled here. The next treaty, 1763, was here. It was surveyed in 1768. Now, this treaty was the first fraudulent treaty, meaning that these other treaties here, we didn't mind settlers because it was areas that we wasn't necessarily occupying. Though we did have tribes there, a lot of these tribes was mixed in with Mukasu, and so they became known as the Wind Clan. Now follow what I'm saying. This is a fact. You can look this up. The Wind Clan, let me see if I can find it in here. The Wind Clan is who, let me get back to that map. I just want to show you the, Wind Clan. Okay, we'll get to that. That's a lineage issue. I got to find that in another book on my notes. But this is, they start, okay, 1773, this land and this land. All right, this is the Treaty of New York, signed by a Scottish so-called chief who represented all this one person. Now, mind you, this is what you got to understand. That even though our nation was this big, you had one small chief in 1790 that took a delegation to New York and sold all of this land to the settlers. Alexander McGilvery was his name. They were, you know what they were searching for? They was inching their way to here. This is where Kadesh was, Mohani. This is where it is, right here. Reason why, you know, it's a mound. It's two mounds here. Right here in the center. Rock Eagle Mound, Rock Hawk Mound. Remember that. Rock Eagle and Rock Hawk. Right here. 1802, 1805. Treaty of Fort Wilkerson. The moment they got this treaty here, this was what they wanted. They split it in two. Boom. 1802, 1805. Both of these was fraudulent. We didn't touch on those yesterday, but they was fraudulent treaties. 1802 and also a strip down here they got in 1802. Then you had 1821. This is where Fulton County in Atlanta came out of, a fraudulent treaty. This is how we beat, the wu-nuwaupu Nation beat Georgia anytime they came after us. In any of my cases down there, that when they was coming after me, locking me up for dumb stuff, people think it was something major. No, the media made a big deal about it and people exaggerated. But we beat them because we showed that how this treaty and the lands in which they settled their government, Georgia, was fraudulent, and thus Georgia lacked jurisdiction on any one of us, any wu-nuwaupian down there. We won that case clear. And this is one of the footnotes you see, one of the exhibits attached as Exhibit 9. And so I had to show the state of Georgia where the treaty came out of, the Treaty of Indian Springs. Oh, I have some documents here. Also showed them this. They had to accept that, you know, this is Muskogee Creek Nation, right? Saw that one. Now this is DeKalb. This is part of DeKalb County, right? This is how they, you can't, it's kind of blurry, but this is where they chopped it up. It's in squares, in sections. And our land is here. So once they divided it up, they gave it 202 acres to slave owners. This is a Georgia land session. 1802 land session. April 26, 1802. If you read it, an act supplemental to an act entitled for an act amicable settlement. See that word? Settlement of the limits within the state of Georgia and authorizing the establishment of a government. This is where they established their government. The authorizing the establishment of a government in the Mississippi Territory. Where's the Mississippi Territory? Well, Mississippi is actually a Native American word. Mississippi is a Native American term. It was called the Mississippian culture they had, because we existed prior to even any of those settlements, and they called us the Mississippi Territory. Okay, this is an interesting character. I'm tying all of this in. This is important to know why Dr. Malachi York, why they arrested him, because he was exposing this. Who is this? William McIntosh, 1775, April 30th, 1825. He misrepresented, he was an imposter, misrepresentative of the Muskogee Yamasee Creek, procuring lands on the behalf of the state of Georgia, deceiving and bribing the true owners out of millions of acres of indigenous territory. And I go into the treaties and the footnotes so they can see that. And so this is how we beat Georgia. If anyone wanted to know, like, they was wondering how I was walking out of court, and how they was coming at me, because I knew who I was. I knew what we owned, and I knew it was ours. So it was never a problem with me to fighting the devil and fighting the beast. It was easy once you know the facts. Once you know wu-nuwaupu. Everyone knows who that is. That's Diane Fletcher, Muskogee, start put on record. And this right here is the Mississippi Territory Organic Act. This is a whole nother thing. So much. See that? Section 5. Look at this. Mississippi Territory. This was our territory, right? An act for amicable settlements of limits with the state of Georgia and authorizing what? The establishment of a government in the Mississippi Territory. Chapter 28. Right. This happened. Presidents authorizing to appoint commissioners to adjust the interfering claims to certain territory. And this is how they created these states. The state of Mississippi, the state of Georgia, and the state of Alabama. How did they do it? They used these. They used organic acts. Y'all got any questions? Shoot. If I'm getting too long-winded, if you need some, just type it in and say, no, I'm doing good. Let me know you there. I don't want to just be talking in the wind. I want it to be clear on what's going on. Now, this book here is Organic Acts. Why is this important? All of it's important. Organic Act is, let's look in the front. You can kind of see what they are. Organic Acts for the territories of the United States. These are statutes at large that show how they created the states out of organic material, organic land. Michigan Territory, Illinois Territory, Territory of Missouri. Look at that. Arkansas Territory, Territory of Florida, Territory of Minnesota, Territory of Washington and Utah, Kansas, Colorado. Have y'all noticed that all of these names are what? Indigenous. Except the District of Columbia. Wyoming, indigenous tribe. Idaho, tribe. Arizona is a tribe. Colorado describes the land. Kansas is a tribe. Washington, tribes. New Mexico, that's a tribe. Oregon, I think that's a description. Iowa is a tribe. Wisconsin is a tribe. Florida, La Floridia, that's Spanish. It means the land of the flowers. Oklahoma is land of the red faces. That's a tribe description. Follow what I'm saying? Now, these ordinances for the government of the territory of the United States, North Florida. So if you read this is how people if you want to know how it all started, right? If you want to know how it all started, it started by those settlements. It started by the United States. When they came here, not the United States, the settlers, as Pop mentioned on, as he mentioned in court, back to that, because we're going around back to that. When he mentioned in court settlers, and this something else you have to look up. You have to place yourself there in order to kind of understand what was taking place at that time. These settlers were settling in small pockets. They wasn't settling like the United States came over here, big country built from the ground up. They was, huge military, great force, influential around the world. No, they were small, 50 to 100 people in these little areas. And they decided to say, well, let's get our people together to create a greater government or a federal government that we the people established. And because of that, a separate government was established. Now you have state governments and you have the United States federal government. The United States federal government is a government established by we the people. It's two totally jurisdictions, two total different jurisdictions. In the master teacher, they have him under a federal indictment. Therefore, they use the federal constitution or the government of the U.S., the Constitution, to claim jurisdiction over him. So when he said the settlers don't have jurisdiction over me, it went over the average layman's head, because the people who were there knew what he meant by settlers. And they knew that if they tried him in Atlanta, why they changed the venue, that eventually it would come out that they never owned the land. I wish they would have tried him in Fulton County. Because Fulton County, we'd have proved that they don't own Fulton County, which we did. And it's facts right here. We got it all here. So this is another picture. Oh, this is just to show you another dark skinned Muskogee member. This is Habola Miko. He was Seminole, Muskogee. And you had, oh, let me show you this. This is the areas that the original land lots. Oh, these are the original land lots here. So, well, this is a better, okay, this is a better map because it shows Putnam County. You see Putnam? Baldwin, Jones, Wilkinson. Now this is where this is the 1805. I mean the 1802 treaty right here. This blue area. This area was the 1805 between the two rivers, and that's the river there. There you go. I'm glad it's on us. It's on this map. Altamaha, leading to what? Tamaray. Once you follow this river up, this is where they came in. You followed this river. Oh, no, does it come down this way? Follow this river all the way up. Boom. Here it splits, just like the Nile. The Nile splits. One goes one direction. The white Nile goes one direction. Blue Nile goes the other direction. Then it comes up here. Right here. When they knew this area, this was the area the Greeks talked about. The vacation spot, home away from home. This area right there in the center. Look at Edenton. And Edenton, the capital, the capital was what they call Edenton later. This whole area was right to where? South Carolina. If you look at South Carolina, look how close South Carolina. Where did we go have our powwow in South Carolina? It was right in the trading point of. So this is the route. I have a map. I don't have it here, but it's a route that goes from here, right here, directly here. So when you had our land in here, and we went out there to have a gathering with our sister Fatima Ma'at, and all of this was over here for I think a few years ago, because it was directly here. It was a direct link and path. This was Yamasee territory. They walked from here to here. They migrated and they traveled. They set up here, right here. This was our area. We built our mounds there. And those other areas, you see Muskogee. Let me show you this county here. Muskogee County. You see that? That's an actual county now, which we own. Nuwaupians own this right now by default. This is a known fact. This whole county is ours. Troup is ours. Carroll County. This whole area right here was a fraudulent treaty. Lee, Muskogee, Troup, and Coweta. This area was a fraudulent treaty. This pink area. This was a fraudulent treaty. This was a fraudulent treaty. And remember these treaties, because we're going to touch over these eventually. So I'm just saying that to say it was way bigger than what most people oversee the master teacher, because they're like, oh crap, this is going to come out. They knew it. That's why they made him, whatever they did in the media to keep this information from reaching, because they will understand that we moved these niggas before. We pushed them off before. We had to sneak back down here in cowboy clothes. And that was the intent of the master teacher. That was the intent of the case. When you look at when the indictment, it says no one understood why we came down. Because no one understood the spiritual aspect of our travels. They didn't know that we traveled from, it was a time they were called Minutemen, and I was one of them. I had to be like maybe 17, 18, something like that. Where the master teacher said, look, everybody in Philly, everybody in New York, we was in New York at the time, all the tribals move south. He sent certain groups south. Anybody that was in Chicago said Chicago came 1 month to New Orleans, then Pittsburgh came 1 month to Louisiana, another group came 1 month to Atlanta. He was sending different groups down here to open up the South, to prepare to bring the doctrine and the acknowledgement of our tribal family, our wu-nuwaupu nation, and build on our territory. That was the intent of us coming down. There was no miners in no car, as they try to say. He didn't transport minors across state lines for sexual purposes. Otherwise, if that was the case, why did any of them, if that was the case, why did any of the so-called alleged victims follow us down here? Why would you follow a monster down south if things were happening to you upstate that you said, which the government claimed happened, and so he was intending to bring them down for the same purpose? Why would that happen? Why would they follow him down, follow us down here, if all those great crazy things was those crazy degrading things of so-called molestation, exploitation happened upstate? Why would they come down here? Why would they follow him? And why isn't it pedophile abuse? If you look at the so-called pedophile characteristic, it's not something that just starts. You don't just start all of a sudden doing things to you. That starts at a childhood. It's a pattern in which people, psychologists study. They study the pattern of behaviors of molestation victims, and they start early by doing stuff like messing with animals, because they can't get the humans, so they start sticking things and abusing cats and eventually it goes to children. So if the master teacher, Dr. Malachi, you're all 30 or 40 years up north, all of a sudden he changes his pattern and becomes a monster, and everybody that was abused up north comes down south. And then it comes out in 1998, the first call. Come on. Like, it doesn't add up, and they know that. But it was by the time they knew when we took our cloak off, right? They saw that we erected an obelisk. They knew we was HTM, Holy Tabernacle Ministries, and we stopped wearing the cowboy clothes. And what happened was they started seeing our faces go up and our pyramids go up and our temples go up, and they knew that we were the solution to Nagaru's problems in the wilderness of North America. And they knew, Georgia knows for a fact that they don't own the land. That's why they have no reservations. That's why they have no Native American reservations in Georgia today. There's maybe a few in Alabama, but none exist in Georgia. The reason why is because they forced us off and they stole the land, and any type of acknowledgement of that would have opened a can of worms. The same information that UGA, the conspirators of UGA, knew, and this is why they was on both sides of his case. Look at the actors and the players of his lawyers on one side, the prosecution and the judges on the other side all came from UGA. Why did they come from UGA? Because UGA hid all of the fraud. They hid all of the lies of the land and how they took it. It was by Baldwin County. James Baldwin gave UGA a certain amount of land that he stole in the Treaty of Fort Wilkinson. This is why when you go to UGA, and it was just integrated in 1979, and this is why no black leader had access to this information, and they couldn't obtain freedom because they didn't have access to the knowledge. They didn't have access to the schools. They didn't have access to the universities. They were desegregated. So they couldn't go in and probe and find out how exactly you took the land. Martin Luther King had epiphanies, and he said it. That's why I told you to check out the letter from Birmingham, where he said, before the Pilgrims got here, we were here. Before that great sign or seal went across the Declaration of Independence, we were here. He said it in the letter. As a nation, he said, we will come up as a nation, but they could not find the information on how they took the land, how they committed the fraud, who we were. They couldn't find the maps. They couldn't find the dates because it was hidden in a building in UGA. You can go there to this point, go there right now. You can check it out. It's called the Russell Building. And inside, you can go online and you can find inside of this building, it's like an $8 million building in the basement. And I went there. I went there for 2 years straight. That's how I retrieved all of the documents and receipts. I was going to law school there. I was studying in the summertime when none of the students were there. And none of the students were there. I had access to all the staff and access to all the documents, access to all the paperwork. And they were helping me, and they didn't know what they were doing. But they took me into this vault, and they had volumes of old documents. And these old documents, they had them hidden, and you had to take the boxes out and find what you was looking for. If you didn't know what you was looking for, you wouldn't be able to find it. If you didn't have access to have a certain amount of knowledge of what to find, then you wasn't find it. Why? Because you're not going to these schools to find out how to get your land back. You're going to these schools, UGA specifically, to control Georgia, to maintain rule, to maintain legal order, to become a judge, to become a prosecutor. And all of them came out of that school. They placed them on Baba. Right? They placed Garland and Manny Aurora and Ben Davis, who was Adrian Patrick. Royal was a part of the conspiracy. Hugh Lawson was a part of it. Matter of fact, Hugh Lawson's father was the president of UGA law school. You had who were in the lower courts. You had Royal, Hugh Lawson, you had, the prosecutor, Max Woods, you had Moultrie, all of them went to UGA, right? And because of that, they knew that they were trying to keep Baba from getting this information out and keep Baba from putting it on record. So they was trying to say, oh, he's crazy, and they sent him up north. But when they sent him up north for evaluation, it was put on record that he was American, Native American, and he was a historian. We have the band when they took him up there for a 90-day medical evaluation, mental medical evaluation, because Garland, he said it on record that yes, he is a caveat. Is that caveat disposition that our client is arguing the jurisdiction of the court because he is a sovereign head of state. He says it on record, right? Hugh Lawson, he says it on record. If you look up the minutes, you'll see where he puts it on record. Now, why is this important? Because the United States is the only nation. Now, I asked this question before, and I'm going to engage y'all a little bit because I've been talking for like an hour. The United States, why do they consider the United States, listen to this, the only superpower in the world? Can someone answer that? Why do they consider the United States the only superpower in the world? Because they're the only power, so-called government power. No, not military. I'm looking for a few more answers before I answer. Why do they consider it a superpower? Military is one. Because prior to that, they were considered superpower before a strong military. So it's not necessarily the military, but that's a good answer. It will be the most common answer. It's because they're the only nation, not the only corporation, that issues sovereignty, so-called. No, not strong economy. They're the only ones in their legislative body. They're not, good answer, states being united. No. The states are only united for a union. They're not united. The United States, regardless of what people say, and that's a very good point, which leads to another question. How are they united then? And I'm going to get to the answer of why they consider it a superpower, but what makes the United States united? Just dig into your memory, dig into your minds, and find out what it about them that unites them as united. They don't have the same governors. No, they don't go into treaties. States don't go into treaties. Someone answered treaties. Treaties are not performed. Treaties are not performed by, and I'm going to address that more sovereignty thing as well. treaties are not done by states, they're done between nations. So it's not treaties. The United States is only united under one purpose. You follow what I'm saying? They have different laws, because you can get married in Las Vegas at 14. You can't get married in Michigan at 14. You can't get married. It's laws that govern different states. So the states are not united by law. And they're not united. That's the answer federal. They're not united by federal laws, because some states have marijuana, some states don't. Federal laws, you can't, marijuana is illegal. So they don't necessarily are united by federal laws, but that's a good answer. They're not a republic. What makes the United States united? Do they have the same people? No. Do they have the same laws? No. Do they have the same names? No. They all have different Congresses. They all have different business interests. That's, somebody said keeping it the seat covered. Now that may, because if the United States said, okay, this is why the United States is not united by any of those answers. The United States was united solely. Let me give y'all the answer. Hold on. The United States is solely united by for one reason. Now, the Uniform Commercial Code was done in the early, like 1930s or 1940s. It wasn't something that was done in early establishment of the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't unite the states. The people, we the people, not we the states. The states are not united. If they were united, you have to show how is it that the United States was against Dr. Malachi York, and what were they united under? They're just codes. What were they united for? They were Jesus, that's funny. They were united for a union. Can somebody pull up that preamble again? Someone wrote up the preamble. Let's look in here. Okay. Let me follow the preamble. Somebody pull up the preamble real quick if you can. My computer is not. This computer here is not working. I got all these big pretty computers and they down. Did anyone pull it up? The preamble? Okay, I can look on this type. Okay, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more. There you go. Hold on. This is where the union comes in. This is where they claim they're united. In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for a common defense, and let's skip down, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and posterity. The United States, the union was to bring to these states 13 now. Let's establish this. When I say United States, I'm not in reference to 50 states. 51, I think it is now. I'm in reference to what? The 13 that signed. When the 13 signed, they were split in slavery. They only united to control the institution of slavery, to control the people the indigenous Muskogee Nuwaupu Nation who were here. They didn't unite because they found some common interest, because the South never liked the North and the North never liked the South. And the reason why is because they had conflict over the land. Most of the southern states were large. And we discussed this yesterday, because they had more slaves, they can own more slaves. So the South was like, we with slavery because they can have more people. And more people mean more representation. The North was like, no, we ain't with that. We're not really interested. They had it, but they were not necessarily pushing it insofar as the power structure. So they only united for the institution of slavery. And it says it in the Constitution. Actually, it's a Priggs. Oh, that's the case I'm looking for. I found it. And I'm going to show you what the judge said in the Priggs case. Look it up. Priggs versus Pennsylvania. On page 91, it speaks about at page 91. Okay. 34. It's in the footnote. Fugitive slave clause. Open it up. Fugitive slave law. Okay. The footnote is in the back for chapter 4. Hold on. 1 second, family. Because we're going to establish what the United States is and then establish what you are not. $34. Okay. I'm trying to find this Priggs case. I don't have my it's in here, but the Priggs case speaks about why the states united. And I'll find it. It just takes a second because it's a lot of footnotes in here. The Priggs case, what it speaks about is the United States, basically history. If you know history, you'll see that, okay, wow, okay. Oh, wow, okay, here it is. It says Priggs was the United States Supreme Court case in which the court held that the Federal Fugitive Slave Act precluded a Pennsylvania state law which prohibited blacks from being taken out of Pennsylvania into slavery. The court overturned the conviction of Edward Priggs. But in the case, in the ruling, he says that, you know, if it wasn't for the only reason is the North and South really established and create the North and South 13 colonies. Created a union was to protect their institution. It was only one institution at the time. There was only one institution that the United States had as an economic power. And if you notice a union is designed for workers. It's designed to protect people who are in a corporation and they have a common interest. And so the states created a union because their common interest was to control the Muskogee Nation and the rest of the nations that they had to conquer. And this is where the question or the answer comes in. What makes the United States united and what makes them a superpower is because it's when these settlers settled here and they began to travel west, they began to conquer different nations. Do y'all understand that? When I say conquer different nations, right? When you have the 13 colonies, which are only the United States, let's get that in. Those are only, that is all the United States is. It are the 13 colonies. They're named after foreigners. The last state that's named after a foreigner is King George's land, which was King George, the 13th colony. Why did the United States colonize the rest of the country? Why wasn't Mississippi the 14th colony? Or Alabama the 15th colony? Or Tennessee the 16th colony? Why did they stop at 13? Because colonialism was illegal. It was illegal. So they could not colonize the Alabamans, indigenous. They couldn't colonize the Mississippians because they were a tribe. They were a nation. They couldn't colonize Kansas or the Kansas. Look up what Kansas means. They couldn't colonize the Illawarra, which were the tribes from Illinois. They couldn't colonize Indiana because Indian land. They couldn't do it. So they took the land through. Where's that book? Organic Acts. I just had it. Did I put it back? They took the land through these organic acts. We showed it earlier. They were organic acts. If you're just chiming in, these organic acts took this territory. Congress created legislation that says we have to take organic material, because the organic material, you can't do business with organic material. You can't do business with a tree. You can't do business with a soil. You can't do business with a person. So you have to create a corporate fiction in order to operate as a corporation. Kansas is Sween family. It's a Native American tribe. Kansas. You can't take organic life and do business as a corporation, and this is why most corporations have capital letters, and they're a separate entity. It's a separate entity. A corporation is a separate entity from the person. You can do business as the corporation, and it separates you legally from the individual that's doing the business. The legal entity, which is the company itself, it's its own personality. But in international law and in law, you can't take organic material, land, and make it or do business with it. So they had to create what? A state of Alabama. They had to create a state of Mississippi. That's the spell. Now, how is that the spell? I hope y'all found. If it's not clear, please stop me. We talked about this yesterday, and it's in one of the actual facts as well. The master teacher talks about state and what a state is, and how he says a state is a state of mind. Now, anyone here from Alabama? Here? If I ask you what state you in, anybody, if I say, what state are you in right now? What would you say? Just somebody shoot something real quick. Whatever state you're in, what state would you say? I said, what state are you in? If you go and talk to a person, what state are you in? What would they typically say? Oh, I'm in Virginia. Virginia is not the state. The place you are, okay, I'm in Ray. If I pointed to a map, and I don't want to sound confusing, but it has to get across so you'll understand. Mississippi, Michigan, right. If I look at a map, or I take you to a map and I say to you, point to the state of Mississippi. If I say point to the state, where's the map? Get it in your head. Just look at the U.S. in your mind. Look at it in your mind. If you look at the map and I say, what state are you in? You would point, or what state you reside in. You may point to a specific area on the map. But is that the state? Is where you are the state, or is the mind you're in, is that the state? Because we talked about yesterday, if you're in a state of paranoia, that's not a place. A state of xenophobia is not a place. The state of, give me another one, paranoia is not a place. So is being in the state of Virginia a place? Or does it describe the settlers' state of mind when they settle? No, it doesn't depend on the context. The state or condition. Now let me replace state with condition, because it has two definitions. I guess that would be right. If I say, what condition are you in? You could say, well, I'm fearful, or I'm in a state of panic, or I'm in a condition of panic. It describes the mind. The state describes what's going on in your head. A state of shock. Perfect. That's not a place. A person could be in a state of shock. You say, where are you? I'm in a state of shock. You can walk into a room and it said it's in a state of chaos. So is it a place, or is it an existence? It's an existence. It's a condition. Your state of mind is a condition. People are diagnosed with states of mind and they prescribe certain drugs based on the condition of their mind. When us as Nuwaupians saw these settlers, when Dr. Malachi York, he established that these settlers came, what did they come with? Y'all have to answer this before I go forward. What did these settlers come with? They came with a specific condition. Their condition was their mind condition. They came in a state of confusion. They came in with a specific mind of Queen Victoria. These are Queen Victoria's people. They have a certain state that they live in. It was a colony. It was a small area, but it was still this. It was still, yes. Queen Victoria was a virgin queen, so called. She sent certain settlers to settle in this new land, and the condition of them was, I recognize the queen. I'm loyal to the queen. I'm a Virginian. I'm a Georgian. This is what the Georgia settlers came with. They tried to push their state on you. And you accepted it. You accepted the state of mind of a foreigner. You accepted the state of the Virgin Queen Victoria. You accepted the state of George. You can never really accept the state of George. You can never really accept the state or condition of another person or another being, because naturally you are in a state of what? Nuwapia. You're in a state of right knowledge. You're in a state of peace. You're in a state of your own culture. That's what that means. And you still are. But if you raise your hand and say what state you in, and you can never be of George. You can never be of New York. You can never be of Maryland, because they are foreigners. These are foreign settlers with foreign states. The letters IA. It's in the actual fact. It's in so let's set the record straight as well. When you look at the term IA, you're saying that is a state. IA is a condition, because there's a condition that they use. That's why they put it at the end of all terms that describes a person. Paranoia, IA. Xenophobia, IA. Suffix. Again, IA means it's a condition occurring in occurring in names of diseases and pathological disorders like pneumonia. IA is pneumonia. That's the condition that you're in. So when they try to say you're in the state of Georgia, that's not the state. The land is not the state. What you see on the map is not the state. That's the spell. When you look on, if I hold up a map of America, those lines are not there. They drew those lines in to make you think, if you cross this line, you're in the state of Mississippi. And if you cross this line, you're in the state of Alabama. Prior to that line, you were in the state of Nuwapia. But once they drew the line and placed the government there to control the indigenous under the Constitution, under We the People as a union, that's where they began to push you into their fabric or condition or state of mind. And they forced you to do it by saying, if you don't become this, then you won't eat. If you don't take this ID, you won't be able to drive. And they forced you into there, but you can't naturally, by natural nature, force a condition on a people. This is why we never will ever be able to fit in, because we never ever will be able to condition ourselves to be in their state. You can't force a person to be in a state of paranoia. You can't force a person to be in a state of confusion, or you can't force these states. So can you force the United States upon the mind of people who never accepted or were foreign to you? That's like a person that's Chinese forcing you in a state of a Chinaman. That's a genetic thing. It's a it's a psychological thing. A state is not something that you can force a person. So when I said the United States, when they united, they were united only for the institution of slavery. And once Georgia committed the fraud, follow what I'm saying? When Georgia committed this fraud, they had to stop colonizing. And that's how the number 13 became unlucky. Georgia was the 13th colony that caused a massive amount of fraud that embarrassed the United States around the world. Embarrassed these. This is why Georgia right now and the United States has this peculiar relationship, and that's because of the Yazoo land fraud. But the whole and with that, Georgia stopped. The United States stopped colonizing with the 13th colony and left all the names. Check this out. All the names of the rest of the lands were not named after foreigners, and that's a reason. That's why people are losing their minds. Who's that? She's hitting that on the head. People are using their minds. It is live. People are losing their minds because they've been forced into these state of minds. That's an actual fact. And that's why, you know, a New York person, and a proof, we said this yesterday, and I always use this because it's common. When a person from New York they can go to Africa. And you say, when you start talking to them, you hear their accent, they be like, you know, what up, son? They walk a certain way, talk a certain way, right? And you say, you from New York. And a person, and how would you know that? Someone answer that. How would you know a person is from New York? Because of what? Their swag. And what did Nas say? I'm in a New York state of mind. You brought that state, a condition of a New Yorker, that mind state, to a whole nother area. And you're still in that state. You're still in that condition. So wu-nuwaupians who are scattered worldwide, right? Are you or are you not still in that state? Yes. So when you say wu-nuwaupu, people are like, where's your land? Well, we're scattered. But you're still in the state of mind of a wu-nuwaupian, and you can't take it away. That's why we always gather. That's why people who talk about us and talk about, you know, they was a part of us, for some reason they still gravitate. They still stay stuck to us. They still want to be involved. They still want to have something to say about Dr. Malachi York, because they began to transform, right? Alicia Keys' Empire State of Mind. They begin to transform into a wu-nuwaupian state. They still have the right reasoning, but they're using it in the wrong method. They still were taken back. The master teacher still took them back to their genes and said, regardless of what, you've been touched, the psychological aspect of your being has been opened up. You have to be in a state of wu-nuwaupian. Regardless if you try to use wu-nuwaup against us, which won't happen, it's still, in nations, you still a wu-nuwaup. You still have this state of mind, and you can't detach yourself from us. That's why they're still on the outside looking in like, yeah, I'm a part of them. But I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like the way the case was handled. I don't like the way people was doing it. They still there, but it can't remove the state of mind. So the point to the question is, United States having their sovereign, they were able to issue governments. No nation on the planet Earth can create another government. No government can create sovereign other governments and call them other states. They can't do it. The United States is the only nation that we allow to continue to force their states on us. They kept forcing their states on our being. And so when you go to these other so-called states, but they're really indigenous, when you go there, you see there's all different walks of life, and there's a government set up to control the people there, indigenous people, and we have to remove ourselves. And this is what the prophecy of White Eagle is. The prophecy of White Eagle, a Black Eagle and White Eagle, and the Red Eagle being removed from, Black Eagle coming, removing the Red Eagle from the track of the white eagle, which is the waters. The red eagle is trapped in the waters of the white eagle. Our red brothers and sisters, red, dark skin, dark bunny, brown, whatever word you want to use, they're still us, will be saved by the black eagle once he shows. And this was a prophecy. And this, they named Obama Black Eagle. Can somebody, you can pull that up if you can find that article? They named Obama Black Eagle. Why did they name Obama Black Eagle? Because when he went to the Crow Nation, look it up, I think it happened in 2010, Obama is named Black Eagle. Type it in, you'll see it. It'll come up. There's a prophecy in the Crow Nation that said they were looking for this Black Eagle to come. Everyone was looking for this Black Eagle to come. Native Americans, they was like, where's Black Eagle? Where's Black Eagle? When Obama was elected, they said, oh, that's Black Eagle. Because it says he will help the people. They didn't know that the prophecy of Dr. is already given to Dr. Malachi York, Black Eagle. They didn't know that he was the one to help and assist Native Americans remove themselves from the jurisdiction of the Mukasu, or the white eagle, was trapped in their waters, which is their jurisdiction. And by coming down to our sovereign indigenous territory and declaring our rights and establishing it and sacrificing himself and making sure that we were in a position and put our feet on the land, so when we make these claims, they can't say, well, where's your land? They can't say, because that's a prerequisite, that's a criteria. Where's the book? It's a criteria in here to have national territory. You have to have territory to identify yourself as a nation. Sovereign, state in continuity, defined territory. You see this here? Let's look at that. You have to have a defined territory. And we're not saying that this is what this is the master teacher's plan. You see that? Page 46, defined territory. The classical criteria for statehood is ex fatis jus auditor. You have to have what? A permanent population, defined territory, and a government. This is for the Moors too. Back to the question of the Moors. You have to have the capacity to enter into relations with other states, independence. You have to have situations regarded as derogate. Okay, real actual independence, the relationship between formal and actual independence, sovereignty. Other criteria is permanence, willingness, and ability to observe international law, a certain degree of civilization, recognition, legal order, international law conditions for creation of states. This is a book, Self-Determination, before 1945. All of this is the criteria for what? Statehood. And this is why it's people don't know what they're talking about. I'm sorry to Moors, I don't care who you are. I love you, your family, but I don't care if you're not teaching the facts. You just not facts. State, you have to have a land. That's not a scroll, good brother. That's not a scroll. That's a book, part of the library. The brother just asked. Moors. The reason why the master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, placed Moors in the Constitution, a part of our nation, is to help y'all. Because he overstood and knew that the Moors had no land. I don't care what this Moor says, talking about, the whole entire U.S. was our, or land was ours. That's not significant enough. And it's not a criteria. You won't get by in the international community under those that prerequisite. You can't say, go to the international community and they say, well, who are you? We're Moors. Where's your land? East Coast to the West Coast. That's not specific enough. They will know you don't know what you're talking about. They will know you have no information and you don't have an international lawyer that can point you in the right direction, because it's not specific. You don't have any treaties on this land with the United States government regarding territory. You can say, well, the treaty, this is what I hear Moors all the time. Oh yeah, the Treaty of Friendship and Peace. That was between the Moroccan government and the United States. If you want to fall under the Treaty of Friendship and Peace, you have to fall under the Moroccan government. Your government is Morocco. You can't have a temple and be a nation. You can't have a so-called sultan whatever the case, whatever titles you use, and claim to be a nation. It doesn't work that way. Nation in international law is a strict criteria. You have to have a language. Arabic is not a language of a specific nation, other than Arab nations and certain nations. But even that, they still have identified a specific land. They speak Arabic in Sudan. They speak the Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Morocco. The brother just posted it. So if the Moors really want to get on board, they really want to talk about citizenship and sovereignty, stop misleading the people and having people send y'all money to claim nationalization and these different scams that y'all scamming our people, because you're confusing people and misleading them from getting to wu-nuwaupu, getting them to the wu-nuwaupian nation. The wu-nuwaupian nation is the only ones that's capable of carrying out a sovereign nation and protecting our people, because we've already walked the walk. We were already able to establish recognition with the United States. We're already able to do government-to-government business with the United States. We'll already have a language and have a land that you can find our name on in the form of treaties, and we can show you right here was on one of the maps. It doesn't say the Moor country. It doesn't say the Muskogee Moor nation. No, on record. You can't find any record on their documents, in their archives, that says we went into a treaty with Moors in the U.S. They went into a treaty with governments. Governments are going to treaties. They're international instruments. And it comes out of a book before the UN. It came out of the book called what? The Law of Nations. See that? Look at that. The Law of Nations. Roll back, couples. The Law of Nations, and it's by Emmett Vattel. You can look it up. This book here, take notes of it, is 4 books. Let's do this. If y'all want me to continue another time, I can. If it's too much, or we got enough, or y'all heard enough, let me know. Okay, look at this. This book right here, right? This is something y'all need to know, because most people, they say, you talk about these treaties, that treaty that the Moors speak about, they say, we have a treaty with the United States. What laws were they establishing at the time? What laws were they used, right? When you look at this is the book, and you don't believe me, check it out. Type of Law of Nations in the Constitution. This is the book that the United States, the early colonial settlers, used to what? Govern themselves. Because international law didn't exist other than in this book at the time. The UN was not created. So how did nations govern themselves? They didn't just create law. There was international observations going on. This book, Book 1 of Nations Considered in Themselves, it goes into the entire layout of how nations dealt with themselves at the time. General principles of duties of nations towards herself. A nation ought to act agreeably to her nature. What does that mean? Us as a nation, we have a natural nature we have to act agreeably to. Preserve and perfection of a nation. That's what we're doing. End of civil society. A nation is under an obligation to what? Preserve herself and to preserve her members. A nation has a right to everything necessary for her preservation. She ought to avoid everything that might occasion her destruction. Her right to everything that may promote this end. A nation ought to perfect herself in her condition and to avoid everything contrary. Let's go down here, chapter 3. Now, this is 4 books. This is book 1, chapter 3. Of the Constitution of a state and the duties and the rights of a nation in that respect. Now, why is this important? This is important because this is what the United States used. Someone look up the Law of Nations in the Constitution. Type that up real quick. Anybody, just type in Law of Nations in the Constitution. And find out what article the Law of Nations is in. Because the Law of Nations, this is not just a book. Most people don't know. This word right here, this term, the Law of Nations, is in the Constitution of the United States. I may have the Constitution. I'm tripping. Hold on. That's the Declaration of Independence. I thought I had a Constitution here. The U.S. Constitution. That's the Declaration of Independence. But I can pull that out too because we might go over that. But the whole point I'm making is that, did someone find Law of Nations in the Constitution? It's an article that says that the Congress has the ability to punish felonies against the law of nations. Type in felonies against the law of nations. Of the constitutional right, that's chapter 3. Chapter 5, of states, elective, successive, hereditary, and those called patrimonial. This whole book goes into the laws of nations and how they were supposed to govern themselves towards us. This is why the United States is being brought under an international indictment. Because, okay, piety and religion, let's move forward a little bit. Chapter Law of Nations, idea, nations are bodies of okay, this goes into what a nation is by the legal definition at the time nations was established. This whole book, and matter of fact, the oldest known returned library book, this is just a fun fact, was by George Washington. And this was the book that he returned after 200 and, well, not he didn't return, but someone returned the book to the library after 279 years. This book was the Law of Nations. Anyone find it? My research guy. Okay, well, let's just move forward. Look, it's in the Constitution. I wish I don't have it on me right now. Okay, article. Right, here we go. It's posted. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10 of the Constitution for the United States delegates the power to Congress to define and punish what? Offenses against the law of nations. It is important to understand what is and is not included in the term law of nations and not to confuse it with international law. They are not the same thing. Now, it's not the same thing today. Now, at the time, it was considered national law. And the reason why you know that is because, and that's a trick right there. The reason why you know that is because they have treaty laws in here. And that's international law. And that article in reference, when it makes reference to not confusing with international law, it's in reference to international law as it stands today. And what we found out is an important principle in, hold up. I'm just kind of going through certain things. Right? It's something called intertemporal law. That's not the book. It's called intertemporal law, right? And what that means is there's a principle in law that says if violations of international law takes place, you have to refer to the book in which the law applied at the time. That means that when the violations of the United States against us at the time as the Muskogee Nation was done under a specific law, which is the Law of Nations. And they didn't respect our rights as a nation, natural law as a nation, and remove this off of territory, which is a violation. But this goes into the legal the drafting of the documents and how we apply the international law at the time versus the international law today. And I'm trying to find the intransgressibles, intertemporal law. I want to show you real quick. Now, y'all can ask questions too, because I don't see any questions. If you have any questions, just shoot them on the screen. If y'all want to continue another time, if it's getting too late, I'm not sure what time it is. But here we are. How long is the video going to go on? I mean, someone says very interesting. Let me find. It's something that I was looking for. Or it can go. I mean, I don't really mind. I'm in the embassy, and we decided to do this and go over certain things and really answer questions. But I'm really just trying to divulge y'all with certain information that the embassy has gathered over the years and protected for our people. And with that being said, we're able to there's a lot of information here, so we can go on and on and on. But I was addressing the law of nations and how they dealt with us, and the treaties that was done between Morocco, because we was talking about the Moors, Morocco and the U.S., and that the Moors, the brothers who claim to be of Moorish descent or of sovereign Moorish, what have you, will have to fall under the Moroccan government. And it would have been better for them to fall up under us, because we had a land established, and the international community wouldn't have a problem with the confusion that's going on in the international community. I mean, with the blacks in America. There's a confusion that's taking place. What is the confusion? Everybody is so separated. Everyone is raising their hand for independence. Everyone is saying, we want to be free. Donald Trump is not my president. They're going on and on and on. And the international community wants to help. This is what we have to realize. They want to say, okay, well, who are y'all? There's a criteria. The international community is saying, there's a criteria for how nations begin, how states are created. Do you have a permanent population? First question. Moors. No, we do not. Why? Because y'all scattered all over the place. You're saying everyone is a Moor, so no one can be accounted for. Rule up, so they out the box there. What's your language? Well, they speak Arabic. Okay, what country are you saying more about Morocco? Okay, yeah, Moroccans speak Arabic. It's a certain type of Arabic mixed with French, because the Berbers invaded Morocco and brought a certain type of dialect called Fez, or Fas is a certain Arabic in that tongue that went into Morocco and mixed in when they traveled. The Berbers, the Moors and Berbers traveled to enslave and then go into business with the Spanish and the French, which is why the Moroccans have a French flag and they speak, their original official language is French. You follow what I'm saying? So if you're saying Moors are indigenous and Moors are sovereign, then yes, you have a sovereign government. You yourself aren't sovereign. You are part of a nation. If you're saying you are a national, you have to be a part of a nation. If you're part of a nation, that nation has to be identified. When that nation is identified, they have to communicate to the government of your nation in order to do any type of business. So everyone wants to be free, but people are falling under the wrong rubric because they don't know how the process is done. And this is why the master teacher is showing us Africa and showing us Kwame Nkrumah, because Kwame Nkrumah is what? He was the first Ghanaian president. And because of that, because he was the first Ghanaian president, it was a process in how he became the president. And that is done, that's found in here. You'll find the information, a history of the continent since independence. How they became independent. People are like, how do we become free? Well, simple process. Follow the protocol and how nations became free. It's simple. How did Ghana become free? How did Togo, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Algeria, Nigeria, Morocco, how did they obtain freedom? Because the exact same process, foreigners, follow this closely. Now this is the most important part, and I'm gonna tie it right back into when the master teacher explained in court, Dr. Malachi Z. in court, that settlers, y'all settle here. Where else did settlers settle, people? Africa. They did the same thing there. Settlers went to Africa. Settlers came to Muskogee Nation, the territory. When they went to Africa, they colonized. Came here, they colonized. Ghana became free in 1958 because, why? Please somebody answer this. What was the document that freed Africa? It was one document that freed all of Africa. Someone answer. I want to see where all the Moors and the people who claim it, how you get free. Someone answer. I don't care who you are. It's not a disrespect. I love y'all. Just facts got to be told. What was the document that freed Africa? No one knows? What was the document that freed Africa? Come on, all these freedom fighters, all these Umar Johnsons and Polites and people around the world, that black Negroes in the U.S. claiming you know how to be free, then you should be able to tell us how Africa became free. I don't need to hear that. If you could tell me that, then I know you did your studies. Then I know you listened. That's the thing. We need to know. We saw some people become free under the same Africans. Those are our people. We're Nagara. We're Negroid. They became free. Tell us how they became free. I know it's a Moor somewhere on here listening. Please type it in. I know it's a Hebrew or someone in there listening. Where are y'all? Because this is time for us to join together. Y'all want unity. We want to be. Y'all want one nation. You know, one language, one people. This is our time. So we need to know. Let's start from A. How did Africa become free? It was one document. Now, when I give y'all this document, you have to look it up. No answers, huh? It's funny now. They can't tell you how 54 countries became free, but they want to free you. Someone put the Atlantic Charter was pivotal policy issued 1941 that defined the Allied goals for the post-war. The leaders of the United Kingdom, the United States drafted okay, that's part of it, but there was one. This is funny because okay, can y'all help me out? Type in the years African nations became free. African countries' independence. Do that. Just type it in real quick. African nations' date of independence. African nations date, and it will show you the list, and it's going to show you when African nations were born. Some of them are younger than you. They obtained freedom from settlers. Same settlers that came here settled there. For some reason, they became free nation, independence, and we're still here talking, running our mouth, talking and marching, protesting, and y'all not doing the homework. And it's not from a peace treaty. Now, it's not towards you. My energy is not towards you, Brother Rodney. But I'm saying we need to know this. This is the fundamental question. This is why we have these type of discussions, so these people could step forward that's misleading everybody down these directions, saying I can free you, I can independent. We want one document. If you can give us that one document, then we'll listen. But I guarantee you, did anyone type in the list of the list of dates of African independence? I'm sorry I don't have my computer up. Next time we have this discussion, I'll have it up. I had it printed out, but I do not feel like going through all of those papers because it will definitely... Hold on. It might be in the back of here. It's right in Google. It's right in please type it in. Just type in African nations dates okay, here we go. There you go, brother. 1910, okay. No, that's 41. We start. Ethiopia became what? In 41. Let's go down the line if you can. Now, these nations have obtained independence. And you see where they obtained, and Ethiopia obtained independence from Italy, a settler. Liberia, that was a different situation. South Africa, Republic of 1910. But that was basically, apartheid still existed even after their so-called independence. There was apartheid, and this is when Nelson Mandela was arrested. And then he was voted in as president from jail. But let's go to the other list. Keep going if you can, bro. Just type in the main ones, like all the 60s you had, or in the 50s you had Nigeria, you had Kenya, you had Ghana, you had Togo, you had Benin, you had Sierra Leone, you had Nigeria, you had Mali, you had Zimbabwe, you had Cameroon, you had various nations that became independent. I'm still waiting for somebody to find out and type in. Yeah, y'all got the same thing. Y'all just put up the same post. We're trying to find the other dates. There's other dates from 41, around 60, because it's around the time the master teacher started speaking about Africa. So there's dates that determine the time frame in which these states became independent, sovereign, self-governing, autonomous, own borders, protection of military, and things of that nature. There was one document that did it. All right. And I'm going to show it to y'all. I'm going to show you the one document. And listen, this is what I'm saying. Don't let none of these guys later come on and try to discuss and say the same thing that we're saying right now, because it's coming from the wu-nuwaupu nation first, from your embassy. And they cannot deny that at this date, no one can, they might do it now, but I'm going to show you. It's this one here. See that? The Declaration of the Granting of Independence to who? Colonial people. Wow, what is colonial people? Colonized people. People who were settled. The colonial states created the United States, colonized Muskogee Nation territory, and did what? Let's read. What does that say? Let's read this slowly. What does that say? The subjugation of peoples to what? The subjugation of peoples to alien settlers, domination, and exploitation constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. It is contrary to the Charter of the United Nations, and it is an impediment to the promotion of world peace and cooperation. Now let's go back to the preamble of this thing. We're just going to walk through this real quick so you see. So I'm showing you how Africa became free. This is what you need to know, because people are like, well, Africa free. They look at the Africans, come over here and look at us like, y'all niggas not free yet? What's going on? Recognizing the passionate yearning for freedom in all dependent peoples and the decisive role of such peoples in the attainment of their independence. The UN also said they are aware of the increasing conflicts resulting from this denial. Do we have conflict here? Yes. What are they denying? There's a passionate yearning for freedom right here. Recognizing, this is what's going on. They recognize there's a passionate yearning for freedom. They are aware of the increasing conflicts resulting from the denial of the impediments in the way of freedom of such peoples, which constitute a serious threat to what? World peace. Considering the important role of the United Nations in assisting the movement for independence in trust and non-self-governing territories, this is what they also recognize.
that the peoples of the world ardently desire the end of what? Look at that. Can somebody say that? Colonialism in all its manifestations. What is Georgia called, people? Somebody type it in. What were they known as? The 13th colony. So if they end it, if the world is ardently desiring to end colonialism, then why the hell y'all still accepting being colonized? Moors, somebody answer me this question. I'm ready to use some other language because it's right here in our face, and Negroes are trying to make it so freaking deep that you can't even, the world has that the peoples of the world ardently desire to end colonialism in all its manifestations. Madagascar and Mali gained independence in 60. No, Liberia was in. No, we just pulled. Liberia was in the 1800s. Okay, now check this out. Let's keep going. Now, this is what the UN has said about having to decolonize. Right, working for the men. Convinced that, check this out now, the continued existence of colonialism, what does it do? Prevents the development of international economic cooperation, impedes the social, culture, and economic development of dependent peoples, us, and militates against the United Nations ideal of universal peace. That's us. Affirming that peoples, who we are wu-nuwaupu peoples, we are Africans in America who mixed in with Muskogee Nation. Our president is Dr. Malachi York. As peoples, for their own ends, we are free to dispose of their natural wealth, Muskogee Nation land, this freely to dispose wealth and resources and any obligations arising out of international economic cooperation based upon the principle of mutual benefit in what? International law. This is what the UN says it believes also. It also believes that the process of liberation. Who was in the process of liberation? Nuwaupians, 1992. We're in a process, we were birthing ourselves, the creation of a state. So the process, the UN acknowledges that the process of liberation is irresistible. And it is also what? Irreversible. You can't reverse our independence. You can't reverse our sovereignty. I don't care what you say. I don't care how much you try to slander Nuwaupians. Our process of liberation is irreversible and irresistible. And that in order to avoid serious crisis, because it's a crisis going on, an end must be put to what? Colonialism and all practices of segregation and discrimination associated with therewith. Now, this is what is welcoming. The emergence in recent years of large number of dependent territories, our territory, which has now become dependent. Is that what it means? It means that we've become dependent on the administering state. Dependent territory, I mean, the U.S., they made us dependent upon them by taking everything. So the territories, a large number of dependent territories, Muskogee Nation territory, into freedom and independence, and recognizing the increasingly powerful trend towards freedom in such territories which have not yet attained independence. They are also convinced that all peoples have an inalienable right to complete freedom, the exercise of their freaking sovereignty. That's out. Don't let no Moors use this because they don't have it. They never showed you this document. I don't care where they are around the world. If they come out, it's going to be problems because they're going to have to recognize that Dr. Malachi York established this already with this in mind. And the integrity of us, national territory, solemnly proclaims the necessity of bringing to a speedy an unconditional end in colonialism in all its forms and manifestations. That's just the preamble. Now let's go into it, what they declare. And it's going to show you, and you put yourself in here as Nuwaupians, as Muskogee Nation, because those are the peoples that have to be identified. Not some random people around the world. Some Moors. That's not what's have to be identified. Peoples are identified as a permanent population, and I just showed you in this book. This book determines this people, and the people, you have to have a permanent population. That's why we're saying with 30,000 Nuwaupian nationals. Everything is done for a reason. Okay, now this is what the UN declares, and this is black Negroes here listening to everybody but their own savior has caused so much confusion now. Nobody know what to do. Now Donald Trump is in office, and everybody want to look stupid and act like they all up in an uptight uproar protest when the solution was right there in front of you, but you didn't listen. The subjugation of who? Nuwaupians to alien subjugation. Is Trump a foreigner? Is he alien to us? Yes. Is the United States government, Georgia government, alien to us? Yes. Did Malachi York, Dr. Malachi York, His Excellency, say it in record? You are a foreigner. You settle here, and I will not be subjugated to alien domination and exploitation. Constitutes a denial of fundamental human rights. It's contrary to the Charter of the United Nations. I don't mean to yell if I'm yelling. I'm sorry, but it's so obvious. It's hurting, and it's an impediment to the promotion of world peace. Now check this out. Yes, they shook. There you go, couples. That's this. Thank you. We were ending colonialism. This is why he said they have to go home. Y'all missing it. It's right here. Let's keep going. Listen to this. That's cute, but it's not legal. I understand what you're saying, energy, but no, I'm not a Moor in that sense. Okay? He did that to protect the Moors and place them up under a nation that can be identified in the international community, not temples. Temples are religious places. You cannot go to a government and say you work in a temple. That's a religious doctrine. That has nothing to do with international law. I just had to address energy balance there. It's much love, but that's not facts. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely, what does that say? And don't take this back to y'all temples and the Moors and try to use this, because it's already been done with the embassy. We're the only official established embassy that represents our people to the international community. Inadequacy, check this out, because this is where, I'm going to show y'all, this is where people say, well, the Nuwaupians were not, y'all didn't have things in place. This is what it says about what your so-called inadequacy says. Inadequacy of a political, economic, social, or educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying independence. Clause 3, read it again. Inadequacy of a political, economic, social, and educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying whose independence? Ours. And any all armed action or repressive measures. Armed action, the raid. Repressive measures, forced removal. Helicopters and guns to our children's head. Repressive measures to keep us from practicing our independence and culture, right? All kinds directed against dependent peoples, Nuwaupians, shall cease. Shall cease in order to enable them to exercise peacefully and freely their right to complete independence. And the integrity of their national territory shall be respected. Immediate steps, not past steps, immediate steps shall be taken in trust. We have declared our nationality. You late. We've been doing this. We did this in 1992. I'm talking to energy divine balance. We are who we are. We saying it on right here. You hear it. So we don't, it's a way to do that. follow what I'm saying? It's a way to do that, not just declaring it. It's a process. This is where you came in at the wrong time, and if you came in early, you understand that there's a process in the creation of states. It's a process of independence, and it's right here, right? If you look it up, there's a concept of statehood, the statehood and recognition, and the prerequisites, the concept of statehood in international law. You have to understand that there's a process in which it takes place. There's recognition here, international conditions. You also have to have, right here, you have to have defined territory. This is a defined territory, right? Permanent population and government, all right? So just follow along and stop chiming in on things that you missed, because it's a distraction, because we already past proclaiming in that we've been past that. We have a government in place. We have a permanent population. And we also have the ability to do business with other nations if you have, the acknowledgement of who you are. So let's keep going. Immediate steps must be taken in trust, right here at 5, to transfer. Now check this out. This is what they're supposed to do. Immediate steps shall be taken in trust in self-governing territories of all other territories which yet not have obtained independence. Look at that. Look at that. To transfer all powers to the peoples of those territories without any conditions or reservations, in accordance with their freely expressed, what does that say? Hold on. What does that say? Freely expressed will and desire, without any distinction as to race, creed, or color, in order to enable them to enjoy what? Complete independence and freedom. Any attempt, not, except if you violate U.S. law, or except if we are afraid that you're going to remove the establishment by ending colonialism. Any attempt aimed at partial or total disruption of the national unity. Y'all not listening. You're not reading this. You see this. Good question. Any attempt aimed at partial or total disruption of the national unity and the territorial integrity of a country is incompatible with the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. All states shall observe faithfully and strictly the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and present declaration on the basis of equality. Now check this out. It goes further. Now this was done with what year? See that? This is the document I was asking people, asking the Moors, because there ain't nobody come on. They come in. I was asking them when and what document was wrote and established by the international community that freed Africa. This is it. December 14th at the 947 plenary meeting in 1960. After 1960, major African nations became free. And they had a program of action for the full implementation of the Declaration on the granting of independence to who? To who? Colonial countries and people. People, you are colonized. Nuwaupians, you are colonial countries. This is, what does that say? The Creek, it's a colonial country. The Creek country, the Muskogee Nation was colonized. Ghana was colonized. Nigeria was colonized. Togo was colonized. Algeria was colonized. And what happened? All of those people, and I'm going to go back over it. Guess what they had to do? They had to leave. Every last one of those colonial settlers had to leave. France had to leave Algeria and Senegal and Guinea-Bissau and Guinea and Cameroon and Madagascar, Malachi, all the French colonists. They set up their governments
They had to pick their governments up and go. Leave the people there, regardless, as it says, of their, what is the word they used? Inadequacy. Let's look at it again. They had to leave regardless. Inadequacy of political, economic, and social educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying independence. They could never have delayed independence. They could never have delayed independence with us. Regardless if they looked at us and said, y'all only have 30,000 people. That's not enough. They couldn't do it. They couldn't say, oh, Dr. Malachi York, y'all only own 500 acres of land. That's not a big enough land. That's not a big enough territory. They couldn't do it. Why? Because you cannot, a dwarf and a giant is a man, just a dwarf is just as much as a man as a giant. You can't kick a baby because it's not a full-grown 150-pound human being, because it's small and it may have certain defects that it needs to adjust and fix. You can't kick that child and remove its rights from that child. You can't do that. Why? Because they have just as much rights as us. The same thing with nations. A small nation like the Vatican is just as powerful and has equal rights just as China. And China and Vatican is one of the smallest nations in the world. It's only 0.4 square kilometers, and you cannot violate their sovereign rights. So regardless of what people say, we wasn't inadequate. Regardless of what people say, we had a small political body. It doesn't matter. You follow what I'm saying? So let's keep going to this so we can get back into what the law says, because a lot of people things, but they don't read the international law to understand our rights. I'm reading our rights as a colonial people. If you don't colonize, you have a problem. I don't care. You could be Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hebrew Israelite, Nation of Islam. Whoever you are more, we are colonized. And you have to acknowledge yourself as a colonial people with a territory. Not Moorish, I'm just a Moorish family. No, bro. You have to have a territory, and it says it in here. Let's read it. That's why it's colonial. What does that say? Countries. All right. Now, what does it say about the implementation of a program in action for full implementation? Right? Check this out. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Okay. This is what the United States was supposed to do. They were supposed to, one, right here. See that? Member states, which the United States is, shall render all necessary moral and material assistance to who? Peoples, the peoples, who are the peoples? Say it, Nuwaupians, of colonial Muskogee territories in their struggle to obtain freedom and independence. They were supposed to render all necessary moral and material assistance. Member states shall intensify their efforts to promote the implementation of the resolutions of the General Assembly and Security Council relating to territories under. Okay. Are we being dominated? Yes. Have we been colonially dominated? Yes. Has it affected our economic institutions? Yes. All of it is in here. Let's go down. To give urgent consideration with a view to promoting the speedy, what does that say, y'all? To the question of imposing fully and unconditionally under international supervision. Oh, this is in reference to Rwanda, but it applies to us. Because it's saying member states. This is a resolution for, this is a resolution for Rwanda at the time they were coming out of colonialism, and it was a conflict. And this resolution was implementing and reiterating the member states' obligations, and in the context made reference, it's made reference to the measures to ensure implementation of General Assembly Resolution 1916's own resolution in particular. Okay, this is particularly South Africa, Portugal, Rwanda at the time, Rhodesia,
Member states shall wage a vigorous and sustained campaign against activities and practices of foreign economic, financial, and other interests operating in colonial territories in our land. Okay, now let's go down. This is something I wanted, but it's another section because here there's all of you see here. There's an implementation of the Declaration of Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples by specialized agencies. Agencies were supposed to come in, and international institutions associated with the General Assembly and the United Nations was to assist and help us in our freedom. This is what they were trying to prevent, and Negroes was assisting the Mukasu from allowing us to move in this direction. And this is why we had problems with establishing certain things, because it was our own people fighting against us. Okay, now you have implementation of the Declaration of the Grantings of Colonial Peoples. Okay, so independent of colonial countries. So, okay, yeah, someone said about the land. Brother, oh, someone just asked about what happens now since we all know the U.S. government are not going to pick up and leave. If they have to. This is law. This is not something that they can. It was something I was looking for in reference to our vote. And I'm gonna get back. I don't want to get my thought misplaced. I want to get back to one quick thing. It was the voting process for our people and how we're able to vote. Oh, right here. Here we are. I went too far. Okay, now check this out. Because let me show you what section I'm in so you know what I'm reading. Problems of statehood, non-self-governing territories, and trust territories. Non-self-governing peoples are peoples who are a specific ethnic group that are in a specific colonial area that have been forced into the fabric of the colonial state and have been in a position where they have been non-self-governing. So that's who we are. But in that, it speaks about 5. This is what I wanted to show you. Okay, principle 5. So you know how we had the ability to vote for our president and how to vote him. Free association should be the result of a free and what? This is where most people don't know where voting, the law of voting comes from. They don't understand how you're able to vote. They may not understand what gives where the whole voting process originated. When you look at this, the free association, which is all Nuwaupians, all Moors, all Hebrew Israelites, all people who want their nationality, should be the result of a free and voluntary choice by the peoples of the territory concerned, Tamaray, expressed through informed and a democratic process, which is a vote. It should be one which respects the individuality and the cultural characteristics of the territory and its peoples, and retains for the people of the territory which is associated with an independent state the freedom to modify the status of that territory. We had ability to modify that stolen land called settled on by people from George. We had the ability to modify out of our respect for our individuality and cultural characteristics and the peoples, right? We had the ability to modify the status of that territory through expression of their will by democratic means through constitutional processes. The associated territory should have the right to what? Determine its internal constitution without outside interference, in accordance with due constitutional process and the freely expressed wishes of the people. This does not preclude consultations inappropriate and necessary under the terms of free associations agreed upon. This is all in regards to what the process of what? It's an annex document for the principles which should guide members, the U.S., and other states in determining whether or not an obligation exists to transmit the information called for under Article 73 of the Charter. Now, okay, now, I can go on and on. But the principles of decolonization is back to the question. How did Africa become free? There you go. 1946 to 1996. Have I been doing my homework? Yes. Am I still doing homework? Yes. And I'm giving it to y'all. Questions to the point where people says, what happens now? Since we all know, okay, we all know that our lands were stolen. That reveals how it was done. Wow, okay. So what's the next step? Someone said vote. Y'all accepted the vote for Donald Trump. You know, you accept someone. A block energy divine balance administrator. Get him out of here because he's being disrespectful. He's on. This is not his forum. So block him. Energy divine balance. You got to go, bro, because you being a distraction. So the whole point is the whole world was disrupted a few weeks ago by a vote, right? No one complained. Everybody was. You know, people complain, but what could you do? Why are you afraid to vote? Can someone tell me why we can't vote? Why the entire world can't vote for? Vote. The vote, sister. This is why we have to vote. That's why I said if you look at Kwame Nkrumah, look at his story. Look at his story. He was voted into office while he was in prison. Nelson Mandela was freed from a vote. Kwame Nkrumah was voted in as the first president of Ghana while he ran in prison. If 2 million wu-nuwaupians say Donald Trump is not my president, Dr. Malachi York is my president, and they see the body stand up, if they see Nuwaupians stand up one time, vote. I don't know why niggas is afraid to vote. I don't know what. They don't think they can do nothing. Niggas like, no, you can't do that. That pisses me off. If any black African, if they say that in front of me, I get so pissed. They say, you can't, what? You can't do that. They ain't gonna let you. This is a slave mentality. The genes coming out of this nigga. The first thing he see me running by the plantation. I'm running for freedom. It's the nigga on the plantation that say, you can't do that. Nigga. But you give there's people that you know who voted for Donald Trump? The middle class Caucasians. Male. They didn't give a fuck. Excuse my language. They didn't care what you thought. That was their right as an individual, as you read in the General Assembly, without outside interference. If Nuwaupians stand up one time, this has nothing to do with the petition. Do that too. Sign the petition. Get involved, yes. But the voice of the people as a whole, I'm praying y'all are listening to me on this. All you have to do is vote. And the world is waiting for you to say, this is our president, because we no longer want to be subjugated to alien rule. The international community is waiting on us. Africa is waiting on us to do this. I don't know what else to say. I swear I don't know what else to say. I mean, why not? You can vote for... We are locked from Kenya. Is a Kenyan on there? What electoral process? Zoza, I'm sorry, what electoral process are you in reference to? You missed the bill, brother. That's their system. That's we the people. That's their government. The electoral process has nothing to do with
the wu-nuwaupu nation. People are saying, well, what does that have to do with Congress? Nothing. They have their right to have their president. It's okay. We cool with it. Wu-nuwaupu is not upset about Trump being in their office. Because when we vote our president in, we don't want to hear nothing from nobody. So it's okay for them to have their president. It's okay for them to vote their people in. It's okay for them to do that. It's fine. They can have their electoral processes. They can have their recounts. They can have their people. They can have their people doing this. You follow what I'm saying? So, but all we have to do is establish a time, a day, where the world can register wherever you are, internet, our site. We put up a site. We say Nuwaupians worldwide, blacks, African Americans, nationists. They don't have to be Nuwaupians. It could be whoever wants to be a part of the Nuwaupian nation. They can come as they are. They can come. That's the plebiscite. The plebiscite is the process. That's what's going on now. This is an answer to Maru Utu-El. The plebiscite process has been done. We've been in the nation since 1992. I know this sounds new to most people. I'm not attacking you, but it's new to most that don't know because they've been trying to keep my mouth shut about it for years. I'm telling you, they've been trying to keep it quiet. You know, people, I've been saying this is the process of freedom. You're not no ambassador. You've been locked up. Nigga, I beat Georgia every time I went to court. Now people like, yeah, this nigga, he must be working for the feds. No, I know the law. And I can stand in court and I have dispositions where I took them to trial. And I proved Georgia didn't have jurisdiction. This case right here, right, that I was just showing you. A case that I beat when I was locked up a few years ago, and they put it all on the news, and they tried to make it, oh, I don't want to be associated with that. Nigga get locked up, the Mukasu come at you and you know, attack somebody or try to arrest you or keep you quiet. First thing Negroes do, like Negroes like Al Carter and other people putting up pictures in my mugshot. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah, I had a mugshot. So what? Yeah, I got arrested. So what? What does that mean? That means I'm fighting against the system. I rebelled against everything. They try to put me in their state and I refused. And I didn't bend. And I'm still here. All the niggas that was slandering over the years, talking all of this, and I'm coming at you too. This is just not the forum. And I'm going to address each and every last one of those people by name. And I want you to be able to come back and address it because I got the facts now. And I waited for everybody to shut up and run out of stuff to say. That's why I took this time to do that. And now it has to be, the record has to be set straight that we can vote. That's it. It's nothing. It's your own individual. So what I'm saying is, as a people, you got Hebrew Israelites, Moors, Nation Islam, all of y'all need to get on board. If y'all don't get on board, you're going to be lost. January 20th, your ass is grass. Now you got one option on January 19th to say, my president is Dr. Malachi Z.K. York. Or they're not going to hear none of that Moor talk, none of that Nation of Islam crap, none of that Hebrew Israelite religious jargon, none of that Christian or Muslim, none of that. You're gonna have to be able to say, I'm a Nuwaupian. Here's my ID. I voted for Dr. Malachi York. Those laws you made is for those people. We were colonized here, and we have a right to be independent. And it's irreversible and irresistible. And you want to go through? How many votes does it take to free Baba? What can we in Kenya do? Well, first question: how many votes does it take to free the master teacher? Let me show you something, real quick. Just give me a second. I just want to show y'all the populations of different nations. All right. Per legal order, permanence, population, page 90, if I'm not mistaken. Page 90. Oh, let me see population. Hold on. Give me a second. Y'all gotta keep the questions coming because it's so much. I don't know where your minds are in regards to asking, but I need to, I need the feedback so I can kind of spin off of y'all because I'm feeding off of your energy. So I know that we on the same page, and so you know that it's not something that's I'm looking for population here, permanent population. Okay. Plebiscites, okay, here we are. When you're dealing with the reason why I'm take it. Okay, yeah, I am thank you for that. I'm looking for the perfect right here. Here you go. This is gonna blow your mind. This is for this is how you. This is what I'm telling you how to keep quiet. Look at this. What does that say? If states or territory entity, they are also aggregates of individuals. A permanent population is thus what? Necessary for statehood. This is why we was telling the Moors, y'all got too many heads, y'all got too many temples, you got too many things going on, and your permanent population is not organized. Permanent population is thus necessary for statehood. Though, as in the case of territory, what does that say? No minimum limit is apparently prescribed. The 10 smallest states by population are what? Look at that. How many do we have? About as many as, according to when they last took the count, San Marino had 30,000. Tuvalu, 9,000. Look at the Vatican. It's less than 800 people in an entire nation of the Vatican, which is a state. Of states with very small population, only the Vatican raises any question on this ground, and this more because of its ecclesiastic character of its population than its size. The criterion under discussion requires states to have a permanent population. It is not a rule relating to the nationality of that population. Now, you don't have to be of the same nationality. You just have to be of the permanent population. It appears that the grant of nationality is a matter that only states by their municipal law or by way of treaty can perform. Read that line again. It appears that the grant of nationality, who grants the nationality, is a matter that only states by their municipal law, the nation, the embassy, can dictate the grant of nationality, and we can perform it. Nationality is dependent upon statehood, not vice versa. Got that? Statehood is not dependent upon nationality. Nationality is dependent upon statehood. Whether the creation of a new state on a territory of another results in statelessness of nationals of the previous state, their resident, or an automatic change in nationality, or in retention of the previous nationality until provision is otherwise made by treaty or law of the new state, is a matter of some doubt. Persons could very well be regarded as nationals of a particular state for international purposes before the state concerned had established rules for granting or determining its nationality. So, do I know what I'm talking about? Yes or no? Can somebody read this? In view of the rule that every state must have a determinate population as an element of its statehood, and therefore nationality has always been an international aspect. There is no fundamental. Yes, we must vote by January 19th. Exactly. Someone is getting my point. Please, whoever you are, I love you. The evidence is overwhelmingly in support of the view that the population follows the change of sovereignty in matters of nationality. Brother, I'm just saying, I'm telling you, no more can dance with y'all ambassador. I don't care who they are. Bring them up and I'm ready because I've been quiet. And the only reason I've been quiet is because I wanted to see what people was going to say. I wanted to see what people was going to come forth and say, well, we was doing this and we studied this. No. You wasn't doing this. You didn't have the legal mind as the master teacher gave those in his government position to handle. Okay, there's a question coming. So in essence, we already have the ability. Nevertheless, can you expound on how we can force or enforce our will? You don't enforce your will on you. That's a good question, and that's something that may where we vote at in our state. I'll get to that. It's an organized thing. On what government? The government. I'm just saying quickly. Zoza, what government are you in reference to? Force what will? I'm looking for your answer. The will of our nation on the government? You don't force your will. You exercise your will. You don't have to force your will on anybody. You don't force the fact that you're going to go eat on anybody. They look at you, exercise your will to go get you something to eat without any interference or outside interference. All you're doing is voting on for your president. No, you're voting for your president. You don't have to force them to accept you exercising your will. You exercise your will as a nation naturally, which is your natural right to aggregate yourself as a wu-nuwaupian and exercise your will as long as it's in the realm and principles of international law. As long as it's done in the criteria in which the United Nations and the international community accepts. They don't, Ghana voted. Britain had to do this. When Britain accepted Ghana, they sat across from each other. It's a story in this book here. The Door of No Return. Where Kwame Nkrumah, the governor of Georgia, sat in one of those castles after he was released from prison, after Ghana voted, the Ghanaian people voted, and they said, we want full autonomy because of that declaration there, because of the General Assembly, the Colonization Act resolution. And they said, our people have voted. I'm the president. You didn't have to force them to accept that. Those people stood up. They looked outside. They seen 1 million Ghanaians. That's it. They look up, the world looks up, they see 1 million wu-nuwaupians. What are you going? There's nothing you can do. They don't have an autonomy, rule over the world. They don't have no rule over us. We thinking we're enslaved. No, I got you. I'm just, free. Yeah, that's the problem. When we acknowledge that we are free and stand up as the body hasn't stood up yet. That's all. We have yet to this day, since 1992, stood up as a nation. Not literally stand up, but vote. That's what the power is. When they do the power, they said Obama, they had to concede. Regardless, they had military, strong nuclear bombs, killing people, they doing all this. But when the people voted in a democratic process, it was respected. Wu-nuwaupians, you have to vote. I've been saying now or never since earlier this year. I've been saying it. Had we ran a campaign, we doing a campaign internally. Now, let me make this clear again for people that are listening in regards to the petition, in regards and respect to our president appointed. She would be considered the Attorney General, right? Victoria Broussard. She's working on follow what I'm saying? There's no conflict. Governments have different departments. We're not conflicting with any of that process. The petition still should and needs to be signed. But as a nation as a whole, we can vote to make sure Baba maintains his seat. To make sure that the world knows that, y'all got those people's president incarcerated. The international community has been through these types of situations. They understand they know how colonials come in, settle on lands, and remove leaders, and destroy governments, and take people and force them off of their land. Rwanda went through it. Ghana went through it. South Africa went through it. Cameroon went through it. Kenya went through it. Ask the Kenyan brother. Uganda went through it. All of them went through the same thing. A colonial settling government settled on their land, propped up a foreign government to subject the indigenous people. If that's not clear, I don't know what is. Questions? I don't even know how long we've been on. What time is it? I'm just all off. I'm just in this phone. Any questions? Because, I mean, there's some other things we can address, but I think that was pretty much how are we going to organize wu-nuwaupians to come forth. However number we have, let's move forward with those numbers and shut the rest out. Well, it's not necessary. Now, this is the thing, Nakiba, and I appreciate that. This is not, I got you, Eduardo. Let me remind people, this is not just a wu-nuwaupian thing. We are the salvation for our people. So you have to understand, we have to campaign for the vote. We can do it by January 20th, 19th, then let's do it. We can organize it by then, have it on record. Honestly, we have to discuss that. We're just trying to, I'm just trying to inform this. I'm just trying to inform. I got you, brother, Parsons. Trying to inform the layout because the thing is, wu-nuwaupians, Africans in America, indigenous, you have to come up out of her, my people. Come out of the mind of theirs and come into your own state. When you come into your own state, then you can establish, okay, this is what we must do. But the people have to be made clear of what exactly, who and what we are and what we're capable of doing. That's my job. My job is to represent the wu-nuwaupian nation to the international community. My job is to express, I've been spearheading. My job is to express the interests of our nation to other nations. But I only can do but so much. If the nation, is saying, if this, I don't know how y'all, I don't know the position of the nation insofar as everyone on the same page. It can be done. We got to work closely with the other administrators in order to carry this out. A vote is an exercise of an individuality, each person, and it's not just wu-nuwaupians. Back to the system, it's for all Africans in America and indigenous to claim their president. You only have two options. You either claim Dr. Malachi York as your president or claim Trump. That's the only other option. Now, y'all, period. Now, if you want to blame somebody, blame the Negroes, the Moors, the Negro groups that's been misleading people. Now you got about less than 60 days to vote for your own president because everybody want to be leaders and misguide people and looking for money and charge people. Yes, all Africans in America and worldwide. If you indigenous, you claim to be a wu-nuwaupian, you can become a wu-nuwaupian by voting for your president and signing a ledger where you will be given an identification. You will be logged under our municipal law as one of our nationals, and you have the ability to be protected. You will be protected under international law because we're doing it the right way. We can't identify the land. All of the questions that they ask, I can show the proof. That's not the problem. That's the easy part. The solution is we got everything we need. We got court documents. We have documents here. We have receipts. You see this receipt? I had this yesterday. I didn't show the end part. This is the receipt where Georgia purchased land. This is where the receipt with the United States. Look at this right here. See that? What was that? Say 4,282,151. See that? This is a treaties. See this? We have the ability to go anywhere we need to go and do anything we need to do. The Statute of International Court. That's a $500-600 book. International Court of Justice, Digest of Judgments and Advisory Opinions. Why was this needed? This was needed so we find the cases that was brought to the International Court in violation of sovereign states' rights, which is our rights, and the sovereign head of state and his internationally protected person. This is a volume. This is $500. Each book, each one is volume 1 and 2. Law of treaties. They violated the treaties. We showed the treaties yesterday. These are the treaties that they violated right here. Why is it the law? This fraud is in there. Boom. The charter. Explanation of the charter. People are asking different questions about time is of the essence. I agree. Well, I was just going through what our part is done. We can do it. Once the vote is in, once we vote as a people, then guess what? You know, we present it to where it needs to be presented. And the tally of the votes was discussed by the administration. You know, we admit the embassy is putting in place a voting process where people can register, right? You register around the world, wherever you are on computer, through the embassy site or a site set up, right? You register and then you vote. You log in, add your registration number, the time it, and you vote. The time is now. You follow what I'm saying? So, you registered online. It's a simple process. You register your name. You can on this website. We want to make sure everybody's in agreement with it. We want to make sure the wu-nuwaupu nation understands, because confusion is created in the process of my job and what we need to do at the embassy. And sometimes it causes confusion because honestly, I haven't been as verbal as I am now in regards to conversation, because, you know, you have certain people in places that want to keep my mouth shut. Now, I don't know who it is. I'm not pointing no finger. I just know that this has been known for years. The embassy we operate under our official capacity. We operate as diplomats. I'm a diplomatic agent. The United States knows it. State Department knows it. We didn't receive recognition. This is a fact. They know who we are. I shook hands with diplomats and they told us verbatim word, we respect your nation. All we have to do is acknowledge one day we create, and this is the idea. We have different wu-nuwaupians who are in different cities, right? The link is not up, Lydia. It's not up yet. We're talking about and discussing it so we can get it done. It takes nothing. It's nothing to do. The information has to get out. So when you hear it, you'll be able to explain what's going on. The problem is a lot of us can't defend it, so we hear it. We know who the master teacher is. We know who Dr. Malachi York is. We know what he's done. You follow what I'm saying? We understand what he's laid out, but maybe some people may not know the legal aspect of it, so they get confused on what we're able to do. And so you're talking to him. Zoza, I'm with you talking to me. I represent our nation to the UN, to the United States. All we have to do is organize it within ourselves. You follow what I'm saying? All has to be done is this. A campaign can kick off. Every major city where a wu-nuwaupian campaign manager is. The campaign is the same way presidential campaigns are done. You go to different cities, you have people who are out putting out flyers. Dr. York for president, we had it up. Dr. York for president. It was posted up on people's page. It was posted up on flyers. It was pushing it. The momentum was going. You follow what I'm saying? As they were campaigning for their president, we was campaigning for ours. We was putting our president, say, look, y'all don't want to, if you don't want Hillary or Trump, you better get on board. You better get on board with Dr. Malachi York. Dr. York for president. Dr. York for president. And what that does is creates the interest where you are out talking to people who are of the Nation of Islam, who are Hebrews, who are Moors. And they say, oh, well, Dr. York for president, they all will be on. They all would agree to vote. They all would be for voting for their second black president, if they, so to speak. You follow what I'm saying? So the timing is now. If we do it now, we can get it done. Vote, campaign, and we create a voting day. The world votes one day. We all campaign. Everybody, whoever's listening, spread it. Vote Dr. Malachi York on whatever date. Follow what I'm saying? And it's all a plebiscite. It's all in process. And it's the UN is saying, there they are. We was waiting for when y'all niggas was tired of marching, tired of protesting. Y'all did it the right way. Wu-nuwaupians, we claim to be so smart, so intelligent, but ain't find a simple process to become free. You're not that intelligent then. If you haven't, that's why I said, I asked the Moors. It wasn't to our people. I'm not saying Nuwaupians aren't intelligent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the world is, that's how the world is looking at us. Because 54 nations had the same criteria on how to become free. And no one thought about looking at the criteria and copying it. Colonial peoples. They were colonized. Ghana was colonized by Britain. Angola was colonized by Spain. Nigeria was colonized by Britain as well. Guinea was colonized. The Muskogee Nation and Wappi Nation was colonized by Britain too. Georgia was a colonial state. They created and made us colonial peoples. We're moving. What's the problem? Right. So whenever y'all ready, let's do it. If y'all ready, the word has to get out though. You know, I don't know how many people viewed, 50 people. I mean, we can bring it up and you know, and so I don't know how long this video, but y'all, it needs to get out. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I can go on and on with a bunch of information. I can go on and on with but I showed y'all the key points. And the God, and the reason why I mentioned God is because I know why I wanted to, this Declaration of Independence, because what they use is the God of nature. I just wanted to show y'all that in this book. Nature's God. Let's see that. Declaration of Independence. Let me do it this way. This is the beginning. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have I'm looking at the definitely would be in the Detroit campaign. All right, that's what's up. I'm feeling that. The separation and equal station to which the laws of nature. Now they made their Declaration of Independence on what? Look at that. Who did the Declaration of Independence? They based it on the laws of nature and of nature's God. Who is nature's God? You know nature's God. That's animism. That's us. That's natural nature. That's animism, which is the religion of Nuwaupians. They created their Declaration of Independence off of nature's God. How about that? And you can't declare yourself independent off the God of nature? And you're natural nature? We doing something wrong. And now we down to a few months and everybody's looking retarded. Like, what do we do now? Y'all waiting for the next 4 years when, hey, we already have the solution. The protocol, the criteria. That's not the only book that gives the criteria. Hold on. We also have this. This is by James and Naya. I ain't gonna pull all up and down. I'm gonna just go through it. Indigenous people and international law. You follow that? That's one. Indigenous people and international law. And we have, let's see here. Oh, the decolonization, international law, decolonization here. We have, this is a list of, this is a whole list of Georgians. I knew this was funny. This is incredible. Now this,
This this right here, we was like, I had to find out where all of the Georgia settlers. This is a book of all Georgia settlers. Now this is incredible right here. This book right here is a list of all Georgia settlers that settled in Muskogee Nation territory. Why do we have to show that? Because we got to show who came to our land. So if they need to know the list and who got to go, they got to go. All of them. Okay. Here you go. I'm just trying to find the books that's relevant to us right now. They came before Columbus. Right here. The African presence in ancient America. That shows where we landed and the different you see the Olmec head and the basic different monuments and things that shows who we are and proof of how we got how we were here. African origin of civilization, wonders in Africa. Now this is good too. I'm just having you going through something. Oh, the Search of York, right here. Ben York, the first ambassador to the United States from Native Americans. You know, on this picture, they're trying to rub his skin off. Because they thought he was painted. And this is Baba's great grand. Let me pull it out. The Search of York. See that? Boom. That's real interesting. Let's see. I had this. Complete Gods and Goddesses. Okay. Let me see. Hold on. International law. Basic documents. This right here is just a basic document law book. Hold on. Stuff is small. This is a basic international law book documents that shows all your key documents that assist in the freedom fight. All of this is freedom fighting stuff. The collection of Benjamin Hawkins, he was the one that settled and assisted in fraud, against our lands. And so this is a collection of works and description of Yamasee territory. Indian removal. This was 1830, where General Andrew Jackson forced our nation off of our territory. This is good too. Ebony and Ivory, race, slavery, and the trouble in American universities. This is where we just found out about the lies that were buried. The lies that were buried in the various institutions. We talked about UGA, so I found the best book that described the America's universities and race and problems in the institutions. All right, so that helps. All of these books was relevant to our freedom because in order to explain the systematic colonialism, you got to show how it was implemented in the schools, the political, and the schools, the judicial system, and other institutions economically as well. Okay, let me just go through a few things. Y'all don't mind, do y'all? If y'all don't mind, I don't mind. I'm gonna keep going until people start logging off and just tell me to be quiet. But okay, New World Order things. Okay, this is where we found out about. Let me pull out. This is where we found out about our nation and the Creeks, our people who 1733 to 1816, all the treaties and how we lived at the time. Story told here is critical yet unknown chapter in the creation of American Republic. Talks about the Creek Indians, wu-nuwaupu Nation, and forever changed the Deep South. By 1800, some Creeks whose most valuable belongings had once been deerskins owned hundreds of African American slaves and thousands of cattle. Now, when they say hundreds of African slaves, that was the Wind Clan, and we had to show how it was two different groups of Native American. It was two different Creeks that gave power to. They gave the power to the mixed mulatto Creeks, and that's how McIntosh became a so-called chief, because the colonialists were settling near our tribes in the southeastern area, and they were mixing in with our women, and so they were having sons who were mixed breed. And what happens once they had their sons that were mixed breed, the sons who were mixed breed had control and rights amongst the English colonialists and settlers and our nation, but because they were light skinned, they had the most power, and the mulatto, they had the most power. And the upper nation are the dark skinned and Yamasee tribes.
all the lower Creeks was making decisions on our behalf without none of the nation knowing. And this is why we killed William McIntosh for that. We killed him in the next year. Okay, man, this conquest by law. Now, this book was used. Hold on. Conquest by law. How the discovery of America dispossessed indigenous people of their land. And we did this. We got this book because, of course, there was a process in which all the lands, and this is how we found out about the other territories in which how they dispossessed the indigenous. And so that was one of them. And let me see. Let's go Georgia land lotteries. We went over this yesterday. How they, you see right here, you got the lands. How they this I showed y'all the map earlier, where they chopped up Georgia and took it through treaties. And then when they land lotteries, they had a land lottery that allowed. They did with the land lottery. It allowed people, settlers, to come in. They put the land in one basket and they put the names in another basket, and they turn each one of these wheels, and you would pick the land out of one, pick the name out of the other, and whatever name and land was picked, they was given it. And that's how most of the counties in Georgia was named after most of the colonial settlers. Look at Carroll County. This is you look at Douglas County, Fulton County, Baldwin County, all of them named that's colonialism. Remember that. Anytime you have a place of indigenous people and it's sectioned out for all settlers, that's colonialism. It has to go. It has to be eradicated. All right. Okay, here you go. This is James Oglethorpe in the history. We found out what made him come here and how he came here and how he got the charter from his so-called king and set up here. Now, this book right here, oh my gosh, this is we found all the fraud. You see, anytime you see my book, I got, I read it. I read through it, and I got these notes on most of them. You see, most of these books do have notes. Hold on 1 second. Most of these books do have notes. You see that? There's notes on these because they've been read. This is an excellent book, Politics on the Periphery. This book has been read through. This book has been combed through. Now, this is an incredible book here. Georgia's Land Surveying Law. We have this one, right? The settlement of international disputes. Our issue is an international dispute. An international dispute is between one nation and another. It has to fall under international law, and how you settle those disputes is based on the charter. Chapter 6 of the charter defines how you settle disputes, and this is where we're moving toward. We're moving towards settling settling this dispute in the form of a vote and moving forward without any hindrance, which we have a right to. Now, I love this book right here. International Law in the Supreme Court. How we use our international law in the court and use it in the U.S. soil. That's what that book is for. Most of these books cost a few $100s, to be honest. If you look them up, you can find, oh, this is really good too. This is Native American place names. Oh, let me pull this out. The reason why I want to show you just real quick, I ain't gonna go, but let's say Alabama. I don't know why I love that word, but there you go. Look at that. What does that say? Alabama, the state of Alabama is named for a people affiliated with the Creeks. Their language is Muscogee. This is a tribe. The name is probably from a Choctaw term meaning plant cutters. The present-day Choctaw form is Alabamu or Alba plant. Now, I can go through this whole book, right? And you'll see how where you turn in this country is named after Native Americans from A to Z. A to Z, all kinds of stuff. Where is Seattle? That's how you find out the names, okay? Okay, so that's just quick. It's one of the books we got, just in case people want to. We talking about when we talk about these names, and this is what the master teacher taught us to do. Yes, that's how it's done. The Indians book. This is good. This is actually Baba's book right here. I have a few of his that I was given because of Native American and protect the documents in it. This is good. Native American Indian Concise Encyclopedia gives you all the tribes. This is another one.
American Indian sovereignty in the U.S. Supreme Court, Native American testimonies, but and of course the doctrine. I wonder if you've ever seen this. You ever seen this before? Have you ever seen this? This has nothing to do with, but this falls in line with the prophet that the master teacher told us to read. Anyway, so we are ready. Someone said, please
get this vote together. Well, I mean, I'm with it. If we get support, I know for a fact this is the only way we can really move forward. I mean, we have options with the petition, of course. That's internal and that's working, that's moving. We got to move, but there's other things that we have rights as a nation to do. And if we don't exercise our rights, you just lose them, period. There's no ifs, ands, or uts about it. If you just say, well, we don't, then just go ahead and have Trump be your president, or have, keep debating online and putting up videos, debating each other, arguing about foreign documents and foreign gods that none of y'all niggas are familiar with. They always introduced to y'all. All the religious doctrine, debating back and forth online, back and forth on YouTube, back and forth on Instagram, pointing out each other's faults, trying to show who's more intelligent and who's not. None of y'all, it's not going to work, and that's not going to gain freedom. It's just going to feed your ego and make you feel like you're doing something big. And after a few hours of viewing, next week, someone else going to have to entertain the same situation. That's not going to be effective. You know what I'm saying? Prince York. Someone asked about Prince York. That's our brother. He works closely with the embassy. Closely. He's an appointed official of the embassy. That's just it's a fact. He does his thing on his as far as his teaching and dealing with people who've been slandering. I mean, he does a great job at that. The best of his ability. He's learning and he's doing he's doing what he needs to do. And so he's a spokesperson for the nation. He's the son of Dr. Malachi York. He's my brother. You know what I'm saying? And we work closely together, especially when it comes to embassy works. Our embassy carries a lot of documents that the master teacher has entrusted us with. We have his African thing. We have African documents. His paperwork from the government over there, and a lot of the master teachers, Dr. Malachi York, our president's personal papers in regards to the government officials and in parts of our government sits with the embassy. It's just been protected for years. And his original birth certificates, his documents from Ghana. We was traveling over there and doing those things. So Nuwaupians can put in. You can vote. I mean, it's nothing hard. And it will have. Well, someone's asking questions about can there be a paper and hand ballot process too? Oh, no, it will be. You can print it out. It will be a printout. It will be both. You can vote by mailing it in or online, right? But if you mail it in, you can't vote twice. So it can only be accounted. So if you mail it in, you can't vote online. So you have to choose an option, and that's the things we have to work out in order for everyone to be accounted for. We do have the ledgers now. We have over 10,000 ledgers. It's 10,000 ledgers of people signed and sent into the embassy to acknowledge them as nationals. So we want to put together where our people can vote, sign a ledger, and eventually receive their identification. So you can establish who you are and show who you do business as. And the reason why this is important, because people always ask, well, can you have an ID and the Nuwaupian Nation national ID? Yeah, because the ID that you use to do business in the United States is a business. It's a business card. It's what you call it's like a DBA. It's a corporate fiction that in order to do business on this land, and you've been forced off of your territory into a territory where these foreign states make you identify yourself, and which is an adhesive contract. You're forced to do that. And so you can say, Yes, I use this for business, but this is my nationality. This is who I am. A U.S. citizen is not a nationality. If you that's why they say, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" They don't ask you what's your nationality. That's not, you can't say I'm a. This is another thing with the Moors. They say, "Well, what's your nationality?" The United States has no nationality because it was considered a place that was a melting pot. So people from all over would come and relinquish their nationality and become a citizen. And so it's not necessary to it's not a conflict when you say, this is my nationality card as a Nuwaupuan national. I'm a part of the Nuwaupuan nation, but because I'm doing business in the U.S., there's my ID. So you can do that, and you can have. We accept people. The master teacher, when people were coming to the land, everyone would come, and people that would come could be a part of the nation, and it wasn't anything discriminative. Now there is a difference between tribal and nationality. There's tribal blood, and then there's nation by acceptance. You're related to the tribe by blood if you come from Muskogee area. If you're from this particular area, right? Most people, you got bloodlines tied here. You have family here that migrated different places. You got mixed blood in any one of these tribes, right? It's a whole list of them. Then you are related by blood. You can have two IDs. You're a tribal member and you're a national. So it's two different distinguishing identification methods there. But it's an easy process. It's not something that it was always done. We always had the process. It just has to be done now. If we do it now and get our vote in, and then we can have this will be our body, our people. The body, the head is the head of our nation is in Florence. The world has to see the body that's attached to the head. If we're saying, if in order for the world to acknowledge him as a head, you have to show the body. If you don't show the body, then hey, who are y'all? So that's what it is. I think this video has been kind of long enough. If you want to do this again, we can do it, in a few more days, or it's really up to y'all. I'm here. We're just trying to see how we can make sure we do this collectively with no confusion. And that's why I took the time to explain that there's the two operations of your nations. For those that don't know, the operation that you're dealing with, me talking to you as an ambassador, is the external. It's like your body. Your body has an outside and it has an inside. You take care of the outside of your body, and you have to take care of the inside. The government officials or the administration, the clan mother and the matriarch, they are the heads of the internal aspect of the operations of the body. They're responsible for the day-to-day for our departments, our book circulation, our bookstores, our different organizations in there, our lodges, our shrine, our OES, our tribal communications, our tribal customs and traditions, our language department, our defense, and things of that nature. Our job is strictly external. That's why most people don't know what an embassy, like we said before, if you ask the average person what an ambassador does, they don't know. You know what I'm saying? Because it's all external. It deals with carrying out interests to our nation with other nations. So when we go to other nations, we say we are the United Nuwaupuan Nation. They don't have to see the rest of the people. All they see is, they don't have to see the represent. They see the embassy who represents the people. That's what embassies do. They represent the people in the political body, externally though. And so let's know it's we all on the same page. Maro Jessup, Victoria Broussard, they're working diligently while we're with the medical transfer and the petition. But and meanwhile, we're working externally to address the other governments of the world to say, listen, we're at this position. This is what took place. This is who we are. This is our body. This is our people. You know what I mean? Yes, because the torture, exactly, all of that, we have to make them know what's taking place. They know the case. I've been in contact with China, the Security Council, the General Assembly, Japan, Asian nations, South American nations, African nations. So we've been putting them on notice and things and what we're doing. And we inform them specifically, and there's some brothers here that's on this air and that know that we actually sat down across from these different individuals and said we looking to decolonize our people. And so it's just up to us how we move forward. They know we're here. The world wants to help Africans in America. They know the black man in America have been brutally abused for 400 years and more. And so they're like, when are y'all ready to do it? Y'all have to show and prove the right way. And that's the only, we have to do it the right way. The problem is all these other groups have been doing it the wrong way. And it's confusing a lot of people. A lot of our nationals, a lot of our family is just confused around the world because they don't know the direction. Instead of looking at who laid out the blueprint, Dr. Malachi York foresaw all of this. By now, our nation would have been a protective location for all of blacks in America to come to. It would have been perfect. You know what I mean? And so, you know, that's where we are. I don't know what else to implement, but to say, because I have a certain capacity where I can operate and I only can do certain things like this plebiscite. So this plebiscite is where we can say, listen, we're going to present a democratic process in which we all voted for our president, let him out. Along with the petition, let him out. You know what I mean? And so we can do that. Again, I can give you examples. I'm not just speculating on the process. I know, I've researched. As you can tell, I'm going to do my research. The people can talk what they want, say anything they want. But when it comes down to this doctrine, it comes down to this law and our nation, I do my job. And so this research where there are specific times when a people voted, a president was incarcerated, the people voted and they removed him. They voted, again, Kwame Nkrumah is not being introduced to us in Pará in New York just for nothing. Research his legacy. Research what he did. Research how he became the first guy named president based on that decolonization document that I just showed you and the rights that was in there. They exercised a plebiscitary process and a democratic process to vote him in. He was sitting in a cell. He ran for the president from prison. He put his name on a ballot. He ran for president and they let him out because he won. And so, I mean, that's what we can do as a body. It's time to stand up. And I'm going to conclude there. So if you want to make sure you just spread it, share the video, and any questions next week, just inbox me. We want to do this again. I don't know how y'all feel about it. I would like to know your feedback. Just inbox me. Let me know. Listen, I'm with it, what we need to do. And we'll get with the other administrators of our nation, and that can help organize and get the campaign going. A quick 30-day campaign, get everybody on the same ball. We vote in January sometime. Vote before January 20th. Believe that. You got to do that before then. Now you can wait and not be in place, and then it's just you. And, you know, I'm straight. I know who my president is. I know who I'm gonna vote for. Everybody got the same right. You know what I mean? The amount of votes does not matter. We just showed you that there's somebody just asked a question about the amount of votes. The amount of votes don't matter. There's nations that only have 7,000 people. You know what I'm saying? It's only It's Tuvalu 7,000. Other nations you just seen where, you know, even the Vatican has 787 people. So it doesn't matter amount of votes. There's no criteria for that. As long as we just stand up and say and do it the way we need to do it. That's all they're looking for. They're not looking for numbers. People think you got to have 1 million, because that's what the protests and the marching did. The protests and marching made people think, oh, you got to come out in numbers. Or you got to march. Nah, it's the democratic process and the steps in which you take in order to obtain that are irreversible and irresistible. You follow what I'm saying? So they can't reverse what we're doing. You know, and so I'll reiterate this information over and over and over and over. But y'all have to make sure you look up decolonization. That's our way. Because the master teacher was decolonizing. That's what he was doing. When he was on the land, we was doing things with our own law. We had our own law. We had our own constitution. So their laws didn't matter to us, regardless if they try to say he did this or that. That's none of their business, first of all. Second of all, if there was an issue, our president, as head of state, we handled things internally. It wasn't for the outside world to dictate. They don't do that to their leaders over there. No, it's okay. It's that they don't do that to their leaders over there who, say it's okay to circumcise infant girls. Violate even North Korea in all of their human rights violations, all the things that president has done, they have not invaded and locked him up. Why? And he's done way more. His whole regime, from his father's grandfather down to this new president, they did everything possible against those people over there. Shunned them from the world, kept them from advanced technology, kept the dictatorship strong over them, and they never invaded their land and took their president. Why? Because it's illegal. And they can't do that. You can't exercise sovereign power against a sovereign. And so us as a sovereign power, our president, a government of retained sovereigns, that stamp is there for a reason. You know what I'm saying? They exactly. They raided Wahani to denationalize us. Exactly. That stamp, you look at the back of the Patarak actual facts, it says a government of retained sovereigns, because the master was saying we retained our sovereignty even though you removed us from that land in the 17 to 1800s through fraud and treaty violations. We came back and we retained that government position. We retained our sovereignty. So it's time. So I'm gonna conclude. I could talk all night. Honestly, I really can, because I just open up another book and go over another topic. But I'll save it for another time, and so more people can join in and get involved with this discussion, because it's now or never. Dr. York for president.